Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this special Saturday edition of Equine Episode Examination, where today it is, this would be our
We're going to be talking about the episode we
episode.
just watched. No, I'm kidding.
No, it's our 100th episode of the show, so yeah, we're gonna do something for that. So yeah, we've been doing this for. I was gonna check before we went on what day our first episode was, but it was back in 2015. Then.
Well, if it had been on a Monday, I'd say yes. But if it had been on a Tuesday, I'd say yes.
But yeah, our first.
If you asked me if it was on a Wednesday, I'd say yes.
But yeah, our first episode is all the way back in 2015. So it's been over 2 years now since we've been doing this somehow. Fittingly enough, our first episode of Triple E here was on the 100th episode of season 5 My Little Pony there back in season 5. So kind of fitting here. Yeah.
And the irony that M.A. Larson wrote that episode, and he supposedly wrote today's episode as well, so it's like nothing ever changed in those 2 years.
So,
I'm lying. I'm completely lying, by the way.
So, oops. Just adjust that. There we go. So yeah, we were trying to kind of decide what we would be doing for our 100th episode here. Obviously, didn't want to fall this on a normal episode review just because it was too big of an occasion. As it was, we had that's the reason why a few weeks back that we canceled that episode of Triple E, because that's around about when they announced there was going to be 2 episodes premiering of Pony that weekend, and that would have made Perfect Pair be our episode 100, which would have been fitting, I guess. That was a good episode to fit on that. But we wanted to, maybe do something a little shorter, a little bit, kind of special on a special day here. So we got to work out where we'd be able to do that now. The original plan was this episode 100 would have fallen in the mid-season hiatus, but the mid-season hiatus was so outrageously short this year that kind of threw a wrench into that. So pretty much, you could be a little less structured today in terms of, kind of what we're talking about and when we are than we normally are. There'll be more tangents than normal probably, and probably won't go on for
You've got me
too
here.
long.
Of course, there'll be fucking tangents.
We're gonna somehow start talking about Sonic Mania halfway through just because Matt's here. All that normal kind of stuff. But we had a couple of things that we wanted to kind of discuss today, and we're going to end with like a Q&A because why not? So really what we want to discuss is sort of how the show and fandom, how Pony everything has sort of changed since we started doing this, because like I said, we're 100 episodes in. It was 2 years ago, all the way back in season 5 for episode 100 there, that we started doing this. So we kind of just wanted to discuss with everyone here kind of how things have changed since then, if at all, and changed with us, changed about the fandom, the show, etc. So
Hey, I might not fall asleep during this episode as well. You never know. Be a bonus.
Bonus. So yeah, there'll probably be a lot of dicking around this episode, but it's episode 100. We don't give a shit, right? What you gonna do?
Episode 100, the episode that's a bag of dicks.
So I guess what did everyone think about the last kind of, since we started doing this, since we had MOP episode 100 back 2 years ago in 2015. Really, we've done this. Obviously we've done the episode flashbacks. We've been doing this for every episode since then for season 5, 6, and now season 7. As we've gone through these discussions the past 2 years, are there any changes that anyone's noticed, or differences in the show or the fandom that anyone wants to discuss? And this is, of course, open to everyone in chat as well, not just us here on the call. We're not even going to introduce ourselves because you should know who we are by now.
Yeah, it's been 100 episodes.
Yeah, come on.
What I'm gonna say is this: the show itself. I don't think I have been any. I am more invested now than I think I've ever been, which is quite amazing considering how long the show has been going.
Yeah.
And excuse me, that burger there. Anyway, yes, I'm eating during AAA, so you can tell it's earlier. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah. I think in terms of the actual quality of the show, I think it's never been more consistent than it has been at this point. But I'm going to say that in terms of the fandom, I would say that my investment in the actual fandom is at its sort of lowest I think it's been. It's interesting to think that when I first joined, well, I say joined the fandom, when I first started watching the show and went on places like Brony State to watch, live episodes, and obviously I would go on places like Equestria Daily and, read the news and occasionally look at the comment section, I would be somewhat have some sort of input. I've never had a massive amount, but I would have a decent amount. I would comment here and there. I mean, now I looked at my history of when I last commented on Equestria Daily. In the past year, I've made 2 comments, which says just about everything you need to know. But yeah, it's not like the fandom still doesn't produce great stuff. I mean, some of the artwork is still fantastic, don't get me wrong. But in terms of active engagement with the fandom itself, I think the fandom has become quite fragmented and very divisive over certain issues. I mean, I'm sure we'll get to Starlight at some point when we talk today, because she's obviously sort of the main character that's had a good ton of focus in these last 2 seasons. Not to say the rest of the main 6 haven't either, but her arc is probably what you would say is one of the key arcs of the last 2 seasons. And I think in terms of basically how I perceive the internet just in general, and it's not just to do with Pony, it's to do with a lot of things I'm not going to discuss here. I think my interactions with other people online has decreased, especially with, say, what you would call randoms, whereas I would say my discussions with people that I'm more friendly with or more I mean, you could say that I'm perhaps going into a safe space, quote unquote, or basically a bubble, but I feel that I would rather talk to people I am more comfortable talking with. And we don't necessarily have to agree on things. Hell, that's what I love about that. But the problem is, if you say something even mildly outlandish now, you just get leapt on now. I mean, if I just say something as innocuous as saying, I find Starlight a fine character, I'll probably get leapt on by about 5 or 6 random people if I say that in a public area of the fandom. At least. So yeah, show, fantastic. Fandom,
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm at the one point back, and this was even before earlier of episode 100, but a friend of mine stated explicitly, after season 2, that he was still a fan of the show, but he was at no point considered himself to be part of the fandom, and he expressly said this to me, and I was a little confused at that, but at first, but then now I fully understand where he's coming from on this, and I'm like, yeah, I have to agree wholeheartedly with him. I still love the show, but I am definitely not part of the actual. How can I say this? I am a fan, but I am not part of the fandom.
Yeah, it's mostly where I just mainly hang around you guys and look at a little bit of fan stuff like Vanna's videos and the like, but I'm not actively looking at the fandom's opinions as much.
I mean, it's kind of I don't think my participation in the fandom has changed much. I was never insanely
says the guy that's done about
involved with
20
it.
hours of ripping this week.
Well, that's I wouldn't know if I'd count that as the participation in the fandom, like actually interacting. But yeah, I mean, well, outside of that, I already put so much time in my personal life into doing that every week that I'd never really had a ton of time, even before I started doing that.
Your investment in the show is still as strong as it was, when you basically first started doing the rips. If anything, it might be stronger.
But the point I'm trying to get to is I was never really heavily involved with the fandom. Like I've always kind of wanted to like, be more involved in forums and the comments and stuff and participate in discussion on the show, but it just never really had a terrible amount of time to do it, I guess. And it's hard to participate in discussions like that, especially back in the day when there was, I think a lot more activity in those kind of discussions than today. Because you'd get so lost. It's like you get a word in and then your word would be drowned out by a ton of other people's words, and it was hard to get into a good conversation. So I tried doing that and getting involved in some forums and stuff in the and early years before involvement here in CQ, and I guess I just couldn't do it. So I guess technically my investment and involvement in the fandom hasn't really changed for me personally over the past two and a half years here, simply because I could never really get that involved in a lot of the parts to begin with, and plus I'm not a very horribly artistic person in terms of being able to draw or anything like that, so I never actually contributed stuff to like in that form of it. I guess what I will say, and this is something we've discussed previously already in the MLP The Fandom and You episode we did, I believe earlier this year or late last year, where we discussed how I do think that the fandom itself, in terms of participation, has changed a little bit. We're still seeing a lot of art, but you just don't get the same level, even just over the past 2 years, that you might have gotten back then in terms of music or animation and stuff. Not that there isn't still things in those categories, but I don't think they're as prominent as they were 2 years, and of course nowhere near as prominent back as where they were maybe in season 2, season 3 as well.
It reminds me back of Pokemania when I was a young kid. That hit, and it basically took America by storm, and you couldn't like turn like 90 degrees without practically smacking a Pikachu in the face or something like that. It was like everywhere you turned, it was like Pokemon this, Pokemon that, and you kind of got the same thing with, My Little Pony back when it first, emerged back in.
At least
2010.
online, I wouldn't necessarily, because with Pokemon, I think that transcended into sort of, you would go into like a shop and you would.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think it was quite the same with MLP, but I think. That this fandom owes everything to it being to the internet, basically. I mean, the fact
exactly.
That unlike Pokemon. Anyway, sorry.
But yeah, as you were saying, I mean, it's mainly on the internet. MLP was kind of on the internet, but even then, I mean, it was like kind of getting to it mostly constrained to the internet, but it was like mainly because of the internet that a lot of the external sites, news sites kind of, picked up on this sort of, broniedom thing, where if it wasn't for the internet, it probably would have flown under the radar a lot more.
And that's an interesting kind of thing, because I do think, because you were talking about, internet sites picking up on the broniedom and stuff, and that's something that was really, first 3 seasons, there's always stories about bronies, but I do think that's something that has changed the past 2-3 years as well, is you don't really see much press regarding bronies anymore. It just seems everyone's just, they're there, everyone's just kind of used to them. You don't see these big articles like, oh my god, it's a convention about grown men who like ponies anymore, because we've been there already. It's show's been going on for 7 years, so you just don't see a lot of those story articles that were written mainly because of the fandom of the show.
It was novelty.
Yeah.
It was novelty, and now it's the norm. Hell, they're now making jokes with the upcoming MLP movie. Everyone's joking, saying, "Oh, how many people in these theaters are actually going to be grown-ass men?" And it's like, yeah, there might be some. I think that people are overestimating how many there'll be, but I think there will be some, and that's fine. Is there a problem with that? There shouldn't be.
But to say, yeah, like you guys mentioned, I mean, yeah, a few years ago it would have been a novelty thing. Like, what would the hell is a grown ass man, watching a child show, doing? But But like you said, I mean, it's become so ingrained in popular culture now, and that it's been going on for so long that what was fresh and exciting is now becoming the norm. What used to be shocking is yesterday's news.
Mm-hmm. And that's something we talked about in the MLP Fandom and You episode we did previously as well, comparing like the entire series, not just the first, the last 2 years, but the entire series in terms of the fandom's involvement, where I think a lot of the change in attitude, and this includes the last 2 years, is just as more and more people have watched this show longer. And I know a lot of people joined in season 4, season 5, maybe even in terms of the fandom. And now 2 years later, those people are again in that same place where the novelty kind of wears off. At first, it's kind of new and exciting. It's like, oh my gosh, it's fresh. And now you're watching the show, and it's not that you don't enjoy it anymore, and it's not that it's worse. Heck, it might be better, but you don't, it doesn't have that same feeling, because just like anything, once you've been doing it for a while, it just becomes part of your normal routine. It's not something, new and fresh. And I think a lot of people still kind of mistake the show getting stale or their opinions of the show getting stale for that. Like, it's not really that. It's just that you've been watching the show for 2 years or 4 years or 5 years or 7 years now. And you might still enjoy it, but yeah, it's not going to have that new car smell anymore.
It's and time is going to be a very big thing. You knew it was coming, everyone. You can perhaps Rain should have a counter in the corner. Sonic. Yes, let's talk about Sonic.
That only took about 15 minutes.
I'm going to make a point that's actually related.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
So, because Sonic's been around now for 26 years, and there's been lots of changes in that time where things have, obviously. I mean, hell, if you want to talk about Pony, you could say how much Pony has changed in the 31 years it's been going on. I mean, there was fans of the G1 show. The G1 show has its fans, and
Pony was better when Rainbow Dash dressed in style.
Shut up, Rain. Anyway. But if you see what I mean, there's the difference, I would say, with Sonic fans. There's a lot of people that have been harkening back saying, oh, Sonic was better when he was 2D, or oh, Sonic was better when it was Sonic Adventure, or Sonic was better when it was darker and edgy, or Sonic was better when it was more cutesy and light-hearted. And the fragmentation that's there is also apparent with just the G4 MLP fandom. There are people saying, oh, it was better when Twilight didn't have wings. Oh, it was better when Starlight wasn't in it. Oh, it was better when the main six were learning lessons or writing to Celestia every episode. These things happen. And the fragmentation is only going to get more fragmented as time goes on, because things change. And that is possibly the greatest compliment that I will ever give this show, is that this show was not afraid to mix things up and change things to keep things fresh. Now, that's not to say it's always worked, and that's not to say that it's always been fresh, but I will never, ever slam a show for trying, and that is what this show has pretty much always done. And you can say, oh, this episode had a problem because this writer was not happy with it, or this episode I'm not happy with because I don't think it did something right, or was not conveying the message in a way that I feel actually worked, or whatever. Mm-hmm. The thing you will always say about this show, they try. And that is the thing that I think a lot of shows don't do. I think there are a lot of shows that go through the motions a hell of a lot. I think that this decade has been fantastic for television animation, though, because there has been a good number of shows that have just simply tried. And I think the real shock of the Brony fandom and the fact that we're even here talking about this is because the show tries. The show is actually a good quality show. It's a show that tries to have the messages that it has, and I would say that that's a very commendable quality in any TV show, whether it's aimed for kids, girls, boys, monkeys, otters, whatever, adults, whoever. And that's the thing. I mean, when it comes, coming back to the analogy with the Sonic fandom, it's interesting to note that this week Sonic Mania releases, and that is a game that is basically steeped in the nostalgia. Imagine if MLP did an episode that was exactly like a G1 episode. Imagine what the reaction would be. Would it be all that positive?
I guess it kind of depends on what kind of tone that said episode would have towards G1.
Say it's very accurate to G1, and say, you know, it's not like lampooning it. It's just trying to be like, say it's trying to be like a lost G1 episode, much like, say, Sonic Mania is essentially trying to be a continuation of the classic games for Sonic. How would you think there would be the reaction? I don't just necessarily mean from the fandom either, just from people in general.
Well, I think there's a few differences between that comparison with Sonic and MLP, being that I think generally most people consider, like, in the pony fandom now, which is now a lot bigger than it was then anyway, but I think most people would consider Friendship is Magic overall better than the original, where in the Sonic fandom, I think most people, or a lot of people at least, consider the older Sonic stuff very nostalgic and better versus some of the more current stuff they've released.
It's not just in the games. The Sonic fandom also is kind of, really divisive between the games, the shows, the comics, because you've got the comics in regards to the US comics with Archie, you've got the UK Sonic the comic, and then with the animation you've had Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, you've got Saturday AM. Believe it or not, you actually have fans that actually like the old Sonic Underground for whatever reason. You've got the anime Sonic X, you've got Sonic Boom, there's
got the OVA.
The OVA, yeah. Something else I'm probably forgetting that it's not coming to mind right at the moment.
You see, this is the thing. The reaction is different, and that's fine. But it seems to me that this fandom seems to be extremely adverse to this, or so many that you see comment the loudest in places like Equestria Daily, like MLP forums, anywhere. And that is what puts a lot of people off having the discussions that they originally perhaps wanted to have. And that's sad to me. And but then again, it's a conscious choice, and you could say, oh, well, those people that want to have decent conversation, perhaps they should have continued to do so and, lead by example. And that's a fair point. It's a fair point. But I think it just gets tiresome and wearying because sometimes it's just the same people, and it's like being drilled in the head with the same nail over and over and over and over. And you just think, stop. It's not worth it. It's a show about colourful equines. Yeah, it's a great show, and I enjoy watching it. But there are other things in life too, and that's I love talking about this show because I love this show. But if someone disagrees with a point I make, fine. There's no problem with that. And I think sometimes I think that is just kind of lost in the fandom in so many places. I wouldn't necessarily that's the case here at all. I think this is why I love talking here, because I feel like I'm in a place where I don't have to necessarily agree, and people will still listen. They don't have to, and they can point out to me, oh, I disagree with what you're saying because X, Y, Z, whatever.
And we're not going to jump down your throat for it either.
I will.
Exactly.
At least I certainly hope to God we're not going to do that.
Applejack is worth pony. There you go.
Let's see. Let me see. Let's just go ahead and mute Matt. There we go.
Hey, Matt,
who do you think you are, Rain? Google?
Oh, not going there.
Oh, shots fired.
But no, in all seriousness, Matt raises a good point that I did want to make about, going back to what I was saying about my involvement with the fandom and how it hasn't changed. Well, that's not entirely true, because in the past 5 years, one thing has changed, and that has been being involved here at CQ. And one of the things that has changed in the past 2.5 years compared to before season 5 and when we started streaming the beginning of season 5 and when we got the C&D and whatnot, one of the things that has changed is we started doing Triple E. And the whole reason we started doing this show was because we wanted to have still some involvement with Pony without being able to stream the new episodes like we had been in the beginning of season 5. That's literally how this whole entire idea came for the show. If we hadn't gotten that, we probably would have never had this show. Not to mention because we would have been so involved.
Part of that, and part obviously Babble with Bronies basically melting away. I mean, it's something that sort of disappeared into the ether, just
but
not
even
for
with-
any particular reason other than just things of just sort of circumstances
life
of change.
changes. Yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
but not even. Go ahead.
I can pretty much state that Babble with Bronies was mainly something with Everlasting Joy. That was his brainchild, and the main reason that largely went away is mainly due to personal events on his end.
Yeah.
He hasn't really been around to kind of put his effort on the idea. And for what it's worth, Triple E has pretty much more or less largely supplanted it. It's kind of a how can I say this? It's basically the next evolution in a way, I suppose you could say.
This is not our final form.
No. Yeah, exactly. Because what Babble with Bronies did was we basically did it in two ways when we was discussing episodes. We, speaking of the devil, he just dropped that from the chat. I just seen him disconnect. Yeah, that's what I think of your show, Elliot. Why don't you come at me now, bro? I stay here sitting with my arms wide open as if you can actually see me through the computer screen. Anyway, but what it was is that the way that we did Babble with Bronies was we would actually show the episode and we would comment on it and discuss it during the episode being aired, and then after the way that the episode was done was after we were finished with it, then we would go into more topic by topic in-depth discussion. But the problem is that we always had like the first hour devoted mainly towards the fandom stuff, and with the episode itself taking 20 minutes of the time, that really only left us about maybe 45 minutes at most to discuss maybe the better points of the second episode. And here with Triple E, we don't even really discuss the fandom that much. We just go right into the topic at hand, and we just break down the episode topic by topic. Like we do initial first impressions, we do stories, we do character discussions, we do overarching themes, we do
more recent episodes. Like that's kind of the thing we normally do is whatever episode just aired. Where Babble with Bronies, of course, you guys were still discussing like season 2 around the time.
Yeah, exactly. And well, the reason why we were kind of behind on that is because we also introduced interview episodes as well. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of thrown into the rotation as well. Triple E is just basically all about the show. This is all about breaking it down, and to be perfectly honest with you, I actually kind of like the Triple E format better than what we were doing with Babble with Bronies. No offense to Everlasting Joy and the way he did things, but this actually just gives us more time to discuss the show. It gives us more time to go far more in depth, and this is actually, believe it or not, in my personal opinion, Triple E I think is Babble with Bronies more or less done right. Not that there was anything wrong with Elliot's, setup or anything like that. It just
there's also a lot of difference because also I think EJ, he put a lot more work into planning for each Babble with Bronies episode than we do for Triple E. We just kind of come on maybe with some notes and we just bullshit about the episode for 2 hours with everyone.
You have notes. You have notes.
Sometimes
I've never had notes for these episodes, which may surprise some people possibly.
But yeah, EJ would always come into the episodes, even just for the episode discussions, and have a ton of points laid out and discussion topics, very specific stuff to talk about rather than just kind of having a free-for-all discussion of it, which
we still have
which
a
was
format,
good in its
though.
Yeah, we have a format, but it was a lot more organized in that aspect by the amount of work that he actually put into the planning of it, which led to a little different feel than what we have from Triple E. I wouldn't say it was better or worse. It was just a kind of a different way of going about discussing the episode. His was a lot more structured than Triple E is.
Yeah, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with how Elliot did, and I do apologize. I didn't mean to say that Triple E is better than Babble with Bronies. What I mean by it being done right is what I mean to say is that I think Triple E is more structured in the sense that like I mentioned, that we don't focus on the fandom, we don't focus on artwork before going into the episode, we don't focus on fandom news, we don't focus on any of that. We just focus purely on the episode and discussing the episode, and since we don't have to worry about actually showing the episode beforehand during the show, we can always go ahead. We could also just go ahead and just use that extra time to still devote discussing the actual points, like the score or the characters or anything else. And if I do sound like I'm saying that, hey, I'm still singing the praises on this, I do apologize. That's not how I try to come across on that. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I guess I am trying to say is that I'm glad that we've went in this direction, and I'm glad that Elliot had his show, and I'm not bashing on him or anything. I mean, he is my best friend. I don't want him to basically come to my house in the middle of the night with his hands wrapped around my throat.
Out the window.
Yeah, out the window.
But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, but yeah, back to it before, it was just like, so now we're doing Tripoli, but like, yeah, this, even with, Babble with Bronies going on sort of indefinite hiatus, just due to that, it was, even if we never would have had actually gotten the CND and stopped Stream Pony, this would have never happened. And and to be truthful, it's kind of, I'm happy in the direction we've taken personally the past 2 years after that. Versus still streaming Pony or, just going our separate ways for it. Because I feel that while, there's not a ton of people here every week or anything, I do really enjoy being able to have an outlet to discuss this. Because it goes back to what I said before, trying to discuss this on some forums or chat sites or whatever. It's really hard because your voice just gets drowned out by the masses, and sometimes it's the masses of people telling you you're wrong. Here, I really like everyone we have here, not just on staff, but everyone that, that all of you that come and watch the show and stick by the site here. I think pretty much most people here are fairly level-headed in terms of their opinions, and we are not always going to agree on something, but I think
level-headed, yes.
Yeah. but I think even if we're not going to always agree on something, I think most of us at least respect each other's opinions enough, and no, none of us are like super insanely crazy when it comes to that. So we know that there's a reason here behind everyone's opinion that they have, and we're okay with discussing that. And I think that's kind of one of the coolest things about Triple E here is it's not just a single, like, one of us coming up usually. That's not how, at least that's not how we want it to be. We don't want it to just be one of us coming up and stating our opinion like this was some sort of review on YouTube or something. We really do want this to be a discussion from people who might all have similar opinions or might have differing opinions or maybe don't have an opinion on an episode. And we can all come together and give those opinions. And I think I would much rather be here doing this right now than doing what we were doing at the beginning of Season 5. I feel like I would rather have the involvement in the fandom that I have now here on Triple E rather than what we were doing previously.
Just quickly going back to Babble with Brains, I think that it tried to do quite a lot, and that's no bad thing at all. And hell, it was probably the first place where I really had an outlet that gave my opinion on something. And hell, I would say that my involvement with that was the catalyst for me to eventually be here at CQ. Admittedly, this is not a CQ episode. This is a Triple E episode. The thing is, though, really, I would say that BWB had such a wide scope that we ended up essentially splitting it into two shows. Obviously, AAA, which is shown pretty much on a weekly basis, and then our sort of occasional show, This Week in Pony. And This Week in Pony is probably perhaps a good indicator of how much our involvement between ourselves and perhaps CQ in general, between the fans and the show, that how much there is of a difference just in terms of how many times we have an episode for This Week in Pony versus an episode for AAA. Also, I mean, in terms of, because it's mostly to do with pony news than just really fandom stuff. Obviously, the amount of news that there is to do with pony is going to be, either a lot one week or nothing for months. I mean, that's just the nature of a TV show. I mean, that's,
I mean, if we were just focused on, like, because we do feature, like like, you know, like Babble with Brownies did, we do feature like fandom artwork and media and stuff like that at the end of our This Week in Pony episodes. And if we wanted to, we could do an episode of that every week just devoted on that. But like Matt said, that's more focused on, its main focus is on news, like in discussing different developments and stuff. And like Matt said, that doesn't come out
mostly to
that
do with the
often.
show as well.
Yeah.
It's not news necessarily in the fandom. We don't cover, say, convention news, which Babble with
Or
Bronies
drama.
did. And well, we have horse news for that. If we want drama, just go there. And that's not me actually slamming on horse news, because I actually think some of the news stories they have done in the past, like outing certain scams and that, have actually been to the benefit of the fandom. I'm not going to like slam everything. Yeah. I'm not going to say that everything they do is right by any means, but you know, that's how they want to have an outlet with the fandom and with the show, and that's fine.
Yep,
that's what they want to do. You know, it's essentially 4chan, the news site, but you know, considering a lot of this fandom originated from there, you know, you can't really say that that's necessarily it's not like it was an unlikely thing to happen, or if it's, you know, necessarily always a bad thing.
And I mean, and the main reason why we could do an episode every week and just feature a lot of fan work and stuff during the weeks there's not enough pony news, but really the reason I don't really do that personally is this, that I love looking at pony artwork and stuff, but I'm not, like I mentioned before, I've never really been into the fandom that much to actually go out and seek it out. I'll see it maybe posted on Reddit or come up on Twitter or something, but I'm not like a DeviantArt member that has 100 I follow 100 people there and all their work or anything like that. So I don't really have the time or the involvement to do that, which is why I'm always appreciative when people like if you send stuff in, bring up VR submit link for that, like I appreciate that, because like I know I know some of the other people to here don't do that, and that's one thing that EJ was more and Tim were very involved in with Babble with Bronies was finding that kind of artwork for every week to feature.
Yeah, I want to give major props to Twilight is Magic for that, because a lot of that seems to be work that was done on his end, and that that's no like small task when you consider just how, particularly like a couple of years ago, how much just how much fan work there is just in the art side for Pony. Hell, even now it's still pretty.
Yeah,
but if you search anything to do with, the funny thing is, if you search for just about any term on DeviantArt, it's amazing how quickly you will find an image to do with Pony, even if the search term had nothing to do with Pony, by the way.
I was just searching for Thomas the Tank Engine.
Well, to be fair, that's almost like they're almost like that now, and I've got my fingers crossed together.
The one thing I do miss for me BWB that we've never really integrated was the group comic readings, because I'm disappointed that we never got to the Cal Rustler arc, as I was gonna go crazy without my southern voices with that one.
I think you already all know my views on the IDW comics now, and how it's been incredibly soured because of certain things.
And while I don't share those views as Matt, my involvement with reading the comics has also pretty much gone the same way his had, just for time reasons, really.
Yeah. I think, to be honest, that would have been the case for me, but I think the
you had some additional baggage on top of that as well.
I have
it
baggage,
down more.
but I also, even if I separate the baggage away from myself, and I did try to do that, I will say I tried to do that. Hard to do. I know I still found it very difficult. And I still think that it may affect my opinions, but I just think the quality of the comics just decreased to a degree that I just weren't enjoying them. Even if I put the drama that there was and put it in a box and leave it over there, I just didn't find them, and I don't know whether I would have actually had really any involvement in them, which I know perhaps J. Smith might find fairly sad, because I'll say this now. Back when I did them, I enjoyed doing them. I did enjoy doing them.
Yeah, I mean, and also it's kind of like one of those things where it just wasn't really fitting with what we're doing here in Tripoli. It's kind of like, I guess we could have discussions on the comic arcs and stuff, but we already have so much to discuss in terms of new episodes and old episodes that it's, we already were struggling to make sure that this episode 100 was like a special episode and not, fitting into someplace else. So We still have the rest of
Exactly
season 4 to
how
get
it, like,
through, and then
think
after
it,
we get through
got
season
released at
4, I'd love to
once.
go back to season 1 and 2 and discuss episodes from those seasons as well on episode Flashback.
To be fair, also, if we wanted to do something like comic reading, we could have probably just done something like that as like a special stream as it is, because like what we could do for something like our Wildcard Wednesdays. If we wanted to just do something like that, we could just hold like little things here on Discord. We could just get on a voice chat, fire up the stream, and just start throwing out comics and just start doing crazy ass voices, kind of like this, just for the hell of it.
No, it doesn't even have to be pony comics. It could be something like really crazy.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
Could be doing a group reading of that that fanfic with Rainbow Dash and the kitchen sink.
Hey, that's another idea. I'm down for that. I can do something like that.
I mean, I did that. I did that fanfic though as a Dalek.
Oh yeah,
You did. That's it. Yeah, you did.
That was for April Fools though. So.
But yeah, in terms of what Mr. Ben was saying above, in terms of EJ's kind of original thing, where it's so much in making sure that the audience is involved to discuss the topic, and I'm hoping that's something that we've tried to integrate here with Triple E as well, where we have a few of us on the call, and we don't want to I guess we could invite other people onto the call, but the reason why we've never really done that is because we already drown each other out so much on here, even just with 4 of us. And that I think it's better suited that most people just talk in the text chat.
Okay, I'm gonna admit something. I wasn't gonna mention this, but I was saying to a friend of mine off to the side that it's just as well I don't really speak a whole lot, because oftentimes I'm usually either talk over or I don't get a chance to get a word in edgewise. So.
And so but that's hopefully we do a good job of still allowing all of you to be involved in the discussion as well. I try to make sure we feature the chat on the screen and we're watching the chat and responding to it, so that you all feel welcome in order to participate in the discussion and maybe help lead the discussion as well with us here. And that's something we really try to do, is again make sure this is like a group roundtable kind of discussion about it, not just one of us kind of reviewing the episode too much. So that's one of the things that I did like about the episode review, when we did the episode review episodes on Bab with Bronies, is just, of course, that's when we could actually show the episode. So we'd watch the episode beforehand together and then comment on it, which was really fun. And it was just great seeing everyone's opinions on it. And it's even better, I think, in Triple E, just because we're discussing the more recent episodes, like the ones that just appeared, so everyone's opinions are fresh and raw. And we get to really maybe not only give our opinions, but shape each other's, help shape each other's opinions on episodes as well. Maybe point out stuff that we didn't see or realize in terms of callbacks or references, etc. And I think that's something that's really cool that we can do here in a discussion versus just if we just posted our review to YouTube or something like that.
Yeah, to address Ben-Hur's thing in chat room, from what I understand, word on the grapevine is I believe IDW has indeed taken over the reins. I cannot confirm or deny that, unfortunately. I don't really.
Sega of America have announced that IDW will be taking it on. I believe new issues won't start coming out till next year. It might have something to do with the contract they have with Archie. It's a mess, and I'd rather not really talk about that too much here. All I'll say is there are people in the comics industry that I dislike than those at IDW. In fact, there's a lot, and I will say that Ken Penders is is definitely one of them.
And I guess just maybe conclude what I have to say about the fandom and changes is while I say again that my participation in the fandom hasn't really changed that much, and maybe my interest in getting more involved in parts of the fandom has gone down over the past 2 years. I'm really happy to be involved here at CQ with everyone, not just here on Triple E, but just overall getting to play games with y'all and watch the episodes with all of you rather than just kind of being drowned out in 6 chat rooms of spam like we did at the beginning of seasons 5.
God, yes.
Where we were all just separated in different chat rooms and focused on moderating and stuff. It was a fun experience while it lasted, and it was definitely interesting, and I'm amazed by our success at that in such a short period of time. But at the same time, I really do enjoy just a small group of us friends here in the chats during the new episodes, and just kind of being able to bounce stuff off each other and actually discuss and chat and not just throwing messages into the void like you do in the really busy chat
I will
rooms.
say this. I'm fully prepared to accept the flack of criticism that's probably going to come my way for something like this, but in a way, it's really that right there is the reason why I'm glad we don't show Steven Universe here on CinemaQuestria anymore. Not that there's anything wrong with the
live?
show.
We still show.
Oh,
we still have. We still.
yeah.
We still obviously talk about the show and stuff like that because there's plenty of people
live,
that,
yes.
that
And
like
I
it that
s-
come
and
here,
I-
and that's fine.
And I also
That's-
sneak the new episodes in at the end of my streams, depending on what time they come out. So yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like as I'm saying here, like what you just demanded. Yeah, I'm glad we don't show them live anymore because, like I said, there's nothing wrong with the show. There's nothing wrong with its message or how they do things. It's just I am just overwhelmed sometimes by our chat room just getting flooded by like 10,000 people, and how some of them were even calling us racist for not allowing other languages outside of English being spoken in our chat room. Like, well, I'm sorry to hell, but I can't speak that language. I can't do my job if I can't understand what you're saying.
And yeah,
So forgive me all to hell if I ask you, to speak something I can clearly understand you in.
and a little background on that, just a little background on what Mr. Ben's talking about there. As you know, we did live stream Steven Universe for a while here. Originally we had just
That was a
started doing it.
mistake.
Originally we started doing it not to try and be some big Steven Universe streaming fan site, but just because a lot of this was after the C&D, and we were trying to find stuff that we could show for those of you who are still around and wanted to maybe watch some stuff. So I was like, why don't we stream new episodes of Steven Universe? A lot of people here like that show as well. Stream it for you all, but as things go, somehow everyone caught wind, and we didn't advertise this or anything, at first. And all of a sudden, like 10,000 people started showing up to these things. And to give you some context, again, this is after the C&D. Back when we were first at the beginning of season 5, when we were streaming Pony, we had a very large staff on hand on Saturdays to moderate 6 chat rooms. We were very well prepared. Our site was well prepared. I mean, I have to give credit to everyone here who was here back then with us on staff, both on our actual staff and like our temp mods, like G was a temp mod at the time, because it was crazy, but I think overall it went really well because we all had a plan, we all worked together.
The thing that
things
amazed
ran
me
well.
most about that is, despite having as many people as we did, and it still baffles my mind that we managed to get as many people as we did in such a short amount of time. I mean,
For the first
I
episode
want
of
to
season
credit
5.
a lot of people in that. I mean, a lot of people will say, well, who was the one that was actually sort of doing a lot of the sort of sending out messages out and that, and I would say that was a number of us, but sort of the people that were basically doing a lot of like the PR and stuff that was bringing stuff out was mostly Rain, Everlasting Joy, and I mean, I was doing some bits, not that much, but and I mean, the part of the reason we ended up getting quite a lot for Steven Universe is I don't know whether we contacted them or they contacted us, but Beach City Bugle, which is like an offshoot site for Extra Daily, which I believe was set up by is it Calpan? Is that how you pronounce it? I don't know. They ended up having us featured in their stream lists that they would post, which interestingly enough they delete like almost immediately after the episode airs, so that they obviously they worry a bit more about that from Cartoon Network's end than Equestria Daily does from.
But we were already getting a
Hasbro
ton of
end.
people here before that too. It wasn't just that. That was just like additional.
I think
ice
people
cream
were
on top of
mentioning
the
that
cake
we
there.
were showing it on places like 4chan, which wouldn't be a surprise considering we probably had people that were from 4chan coming to CinemaQuestria when we were showing Pony.
Yeah.
So,
But I think most of the people we got, surprisingly, like were fairly like well. Like,
in terms
we got
of
a good
Pony,
we got a
what I
good
was gonna
crowd.
mention, we had the huge amount of people we had. I actually thought the amount of like troublemakers we had was actually very small.
Yeah.
Compared with like how
People
many people
legitimately
were
were
there.
excited.
It was still
for
a
the show.
problem, like talking into the void when you had so many people talking over everyone.
Yeah.
I'll agree with that, but
I
yeah.
also think that perhaps back then, I think Brony's take probably kind of saw us as rivals, because I remembered when we first came up, I know Brony's State started stating for their Pony streams Games were I forget what they were saying, but I know in their newsletters they were saying we've been the original pony streaming service since whatever. I don't know. I don't know if they said that because as they saw us as competition or whatever, but it's something I noticed.
The funny thing is, I never really saw like a decline in any other stream's viewership. I don't know where all the people that came to our stream came from, because they certainly didn't go. Most people didn't go other places elsewhere, because I never saw the numbers fluctuate a ton on other streaming sites, which was crazy, because I don't know where we got these people from. but they were good people. But I mean, back to my original point was that after we got the C&D, obviously we a lot of people here on staff, busy with life and other things and stuff, they were here to help us, moderate the chats on the weekends for that. But yeah, so by the time Steven Universe started coming around and we got like a bajillion people here, we just didn't have the moderation staff to deal with that. And we're not a Steven Universe fan site. We could have gone out and tried to like get more moderators or something, but we're not a Steven Universe fan site. I don't think most of us here are that involved in the Steven Universe fandom to want to go that direction.
I certainly, for one, am not.
So yeah, it's just.
I don't have a Tumblr account, so of course I'm not.
So it was just kind of one of those things where we decided that internally that we can't handle this influx of chat rooms. I mean, we could do other things like mute people or force people to register, and it kind of works, but it just wound up being more trouble than it was really worth it for us.
Here.
I don't like the idea of having to make people register. I know we've been swapping and using Discord. We still have IRC as our legacy chat, and that is still available to people. And you don't have to sign up to Discord to use the Discord chat, I believe. That's correct, yes?
No, you don't have to. It's recommended, but you don't have
exactly. To. And I feel that if anyone new ever wants to come here, I'd like to think that we are open and welcoming to having new people here. Obviously, as long as they follow the site rules and yada yada yada.
Yeah, exactly.
I welcome having the new fresh perspective. If people want to come here, and that's great, and that's fine. The problem, I think, when you have so many people congregate, it's nice to think, oh wow, look at all these people that we are getting here. The question is, what are you doing with them? What's making them invested? Because we were getting 10,000 people coming here. How many of those people actually only just came there for the fact that we were streaming the show?
Almost all of them.
95% at least, maybe more, and that's
I'd say more like along the lines of 98%.
And the thing is, though, those people are going to, a number of those people are going to go elsewhere if we don't do it. Someone else is going to do it because they've not had a C&D, or they don't give a shit about potentially being in a court or whatever. But I think that what we did was incredibly successful, but it was also incredibly tiring. It was incredibly stressful. Yes. It was incredibly difficult. It was also, I think I probably snapped more than anybody else here, and it's interesting to see that. I'd like to think that since that has happened, that I have been a lot more mellow. And the funny thing is in real life, I don't really snap at all very often. It takes a lot. And it was getting to a point at times when it wasn't taking a lot for me to snap here at CQ, and I wasn't enjoying myself half the time sometimes. And that I'm going to be honest. I sort of stomped out and walked off away from the site on a number of occasions, and it's I think that it doesn't reflect well on me looking back on it, and there are some times that I feel like I've done things that I kind of regret, but I think the thing that kept me coming was that a very small core people that basically have much more sanity than perhaps even I have, and I think I'm gonna gush about one person here, and I'm sure he's gonna hate me to do this. Rain Shadow is probably the reason why I'm still here, and it's I can't thank the guy enough. I would hug him if he was next to me right now.
Oh, fuck you too, Matt. Thanks, thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you kept sticking around, man, because every time you walked off, it made me nervous, because if you went away forever, I'd miss you greatly. So I'm glad you stuck around. You're still here.
But yeah, I mean, I don't want to understate what Matt's saying in terms of the stressfulness. I mean, there was a time during those first kind of 3 or 4 weeks we were streaming, I literally had no time to do anything else here. I wasn't streaming anything. I wasn't playing games. I wasn't having any sort of fun. It was just prepping for the next week, doing the stuff I have to do for the VGM rips, the other main kind of streams that I was involved in then. And there was just, it was an extremely stressful time to have to do that. We pulled it off really well through just some great teamwork and communication, but it was a stressful time, and there's a lot of internal disagreements and stuff over how we should do stuff, and it just, everything piles on top of each other. Everyone here has been fantastic to work with, but it's just, it was a lot of stress, and I think that's one of the...
Stress is something that's going to cause conflict.
Yeah.
There's no denying that, and I think you may notice that the Saturday streams, something you may not know, because it's obviously something that was behind the scenes. But I'm just gonna peek, because it's the 100th episode. I'm just gonna peek behind the curtain just a little bit for you. Pretty much all of when we first started doing the live streaming of Pony, all of the Saturday event stuff was basically organised by Rain Shadow here, and it was quite amazing how much work he put into those, and how much he would make sure that the schedules were filled with shows that people would be interested in watching. Obviously, there was discussions between us staff, obviously, what as suggestions to have, but the actual final schedules were laid out by Rain Shadow. But the stress was getting him to so much that he was basically saying to me, and probably to others, look, this is just too much, I can't cope. And that's when I started taking over, and I started doing, because something that you may or may not realize, I'm not very technically minded. I mean, I joined here to do streaming, but when I first came here, I had a terrible ADSL connection that could barely do anything. Why I even applied, I do not know. Maybe it's because I just felt that I liked, the guys that were doing BWB so much that I felt that, I felt I wanted to help. Necessarily, I could help. And
it's pretty much the same reason I wanted to join too.
Mm-hmm.
I do have to apologize, because I could have been doing a lot more streaming than what I have been. My internet's not like shit or anything like that. My main computer, my desktop was kind of running kind of slow sometimes, so it'd be like a lot of programs would be kind of hogging the memory, so that was kind of one of the reasons why I didn't do a whole lot on my desktop. But I don't really have a whole lot of that problem here on my laptop, and if I really wanted to, I could just go ahead and step up to be a more regular streamer. The only main reasons why I don't is probably because of the fact I do work night shifts, so a lot of the time I'm usually sleeping during the day as it is anyway.
You have a fun shift.
I mean,
Yeah.
My streaming has improved dramatically just because I've managed to find ways to be able to stream via using my mobile, which means I have considerably better upload speeds. But a lot of the improvements to my what I would call streamcraft, or my stream foo, is also down to Rain Shadow, because when I first started here, I used a crappy, not even really mid-range laptop that was running Windows 7 and could barely run XSplit, let alone anything else. And I actually saw someone record some of the first stream we did leading up to season 5, and my footage of Sonic Adventure, and oh god, the choppiness and just how bad it looked. I cringed into my hands when I saw it not recently, it was about a year or two ago. I cringed into my hands oh my god, that looks so bad. Oh my god. And yeah, because not long after that, I ended up getting a Mac, and I don't know what made me do that. I think it was because I was on jury. I think the reason when I got it was I was on jury duty, and in the city where I was obviously having to do that, they had an Apple store, and I was basically during my lunch breaks.
Yeah, because I told you to go there to at least try it out.
And and basically I just fell in love with it almost immediately, and Rain basically helped me get up to speed with that. Xena was also a person that helped me quite a lot with that as well, especially with being able to help update the site, because there's a string of people here that would deserve credit for the site. I mean, especially Xena and McCarpy and obviously Ben and probably Everlasting Joy as well. But yeah, I mean, they're technically on, it's some of the stuff that the site's actually capable of doing for, like, especially for streaming. It's just insane.
Yeah, Maccabi just
and the fact that idiots like me can understand how to use it as well.
And of course, Xena. There was a time when only a few people could update the site, but Xena kind of redid the whole site backbone before we started like season 5. So like everyone here is able to update it now in a very easy to figure out way. So that's so much better now. That's one of the reasons we were able to add so much new things to the site, because it wasn't just all being placed on one person to try and do all this stuff for it.
I will also say this: I give mad props to Xena and Copy for putting the stream site as we do for changing out the stream overlays, the stream border, the stream title. We had the ability to do that on Brony State, but that was through a totally different method. That was through a totally different setup. That was far more convoluted than it needed to be. And the way that McCopy and Xena did it, it's just so easier. You could just pull it up, you could just make your changes, and it'd be ready to go like right on the site without having to reload it. It automatically refreshes. It is just, man, if they were like in real life, I would probably just give them a big fat kiss on their cheek, because they'd fucking deserve it.
I think that image in chat represents everything.
Yes.
Yeah, just right.
But yeah, I mean, like I say, the Saturday streams now, actually pretty much everything you see now on a Saturday stream is now provided for by me, basically because I feel like I needed something to do here, because I'm just otherwise I'd just be a lazy fucker here.
You're here for your Britishness. You gotta have that extra class here on Triple.
No, you're here to listen to me sleep on stream.
No, but yeah, I mean, I think over, just again, just going back to Triple E here. Yeah, I mean,
sorry about that. You knew I was going to be.
I mean, I knew we were going to get on tangents, but yeah, I mean, this is kind of filled. I know this has filled a void for me in terms of being able to actually discuss stuff, and I'm really happy that everything has changed the way it did in that first year, 2015, and how we've kind of made more changes ongoing forward, because it's just great to be able to discuss this with everyone in just a smaller group of everyone here, that rather than just like we was talking about the void of messages that you would get in other places. Shifting gears back to the show really quick, I had something else that I had written down to discuss, and I think one of the big because again, just focusing on the last kind of 2 years since we started doing Triple E in 2015, the show has actually undergone a lot of changes. I would argue more changes then in those past 2 years than the rest of its run. I mean, just look at all the different story editors that we've had on the show just the past 2 years. When we started doing Triple E, Megan McCarthy was the main story editor, with Larson doing some additional story editing for a few of the episodes in the first half of the season. But since then, Season 6 was story edited by Josh Haber. This season is being story edited by, and I would almost argue Mike Vogel as well, sort of pseudo story editing that season as well, just the amount of involvement he had in a lot of the stories there. And of course, Joanna Christine doing this season. We've had director's changes with Jason as well as Megan leaving in mid-season 5 to go work on the movie, and Big Jim taking over, and some other 3 or 4 new other directors, people moving up the director's chair. Of course, all the different changes with the movie and Equestria Girls. I mean, there's definitely been a lot of changes in terms of show staff the past 2 years.
And the thing is, though, I think it's something we've mentioned a few times on Triple E, especially this season. The amount of people that actually, that are writing for the show now that only joined from season 5. So they basically joined when we first started doing Triple E, more or less, maybe slightly before, but not very much. And up until, funnily enough, the episode that airs on the same day that this airs, with the Larson credited episode that we have today, before that, no one that had written an episode for the show had been on the show before season 5, and the quality of the show, I think, is as strong as it's ever been. I mean, yeah, it's different now in terms of some of the lessons we learn, and some of the the way the episode's structured, and obviously, and who is the main focus. I mean, we've had a lot of episodes focused. I mean, we've had an episode focused on Big Mac. We've had an episode focused on, like, you could say possibly even sort of Granny Smith. We've had an episode now that's focused on Applejack's parents, something that we thought was going to be the stuff of myth and legend, an episode that was based around Luna and Celestia. It's kind of crazy to think,
the CMC's actually getting their cutie marks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to say this now. When the show does eventually end, which doesn't look like it's going to be anytime soon, which, hey, I'm not going to complain. What I will say is, that episode, Crusaders of the Lost Mark, I think that was possibly the high watermark so far since we've done AAA for the show. That's not to say that other episodes haven't been fantastic, and they sure as hell are and have been. But yeah, I think, to me, in terms of, especially, I think the thing that made that episode to me was the fact that literally no spoilers or any advance, like, anything was done for that. There was no, like, previews or anything, and I think that made it just all the better for me.
That was such a true kind of out of left field episode. Because there weren't even any episode previews that week for the episode. There was just nothing. Just silence.
It was like, oh, it's the 5th year anniversary of the show. Oh well, yeah, that's great. But there's an episode this weekend.
Just another day on the job.
But it's really interesting just to see again how much the show has, I think, improved in season 5, and has, at the very least, I think, maintained that improvement since then. Season 5, I think, was still my favorite season of the show going into this season. Season 6 was good, but I think season 5 still edged it out because of some of the episodes that it had. I think
the emotion, I think,
more
than just anything else.
Yeah, just the emotion. I really think that now already season 7 is kind of, at the very least, giving that season 5 a run for its money, which is saying something, again, 2 years later here on a show that's already been going for 7 years, to say that, wow, I'm really enjoying a lot of these episodes. And like Matt had mentioned, Joanne and Christine really aren't holding any punches this season in terms of tackling episodes that we've been waiting for the show to tackle for a while, and doing it really well.
I also have to admit, I'm really loving this current season as it is. Season 7 here. Like I mentioned in the chat room, it's like during this past episode that we just seen earlier today. It's like I've probably mentioned this before in earlier seasons, but it's like it seems like this particular season has just been hitting every one of these episodes just right out of the park, just one home run after the other. Almost. And I've noticed, I've made this before, but it's like it seems like every time, to me, almost every time, that the show cannot possibly top itself, the next episode comes along and just shatters my expectations even further.
Mm-hmm.
In some form or fashion. And even if the episode itself is not objectively as good as the last one, I will admit that, building off of a little bit of what Matt said before, the show isn't afraid just to try. It's also not afraid to experiment. And it's certainly not, shy of poking fun at itself. Certainly not shy of poking fun at its fan base either, if the last episode was anything to judge on.
They did a lot of that in season 5 and episode 100 as well.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing with the episode 100 thing there as well. The thing is, though, a lot of people will say, that the show has a lot of, like, older fans, or not necessarily older fans, but people that identify as bronies. That doesn't necessarily have to be, like, they could be teenagers. A lot of them seem to give more credit to our involvement as being fans than I think we sometimes necessarily always deserve. And they say, this show's been going on for so long because of the fandom. I would say the reason why this show's been going on for as long as it is because the toys based on it are still selling. That's the be all and end all. All Hasbro cares about is the toy sales. They how well the show does is secondary, but I think Hasbro has woken up to the fact that producing a good show is perhaps a good idea to actually make, if you make a good product there, that people are going to be more likely to want to buy your product, which
listen to any of their
Sony
investor
Pictures Animation want to learn.
I mean, we'll listen to any of their investor presentations and stuff. They're very much focused on using story, and they say this all over and over and over again all the time, that the story is what is their key to like their business. Like, telling good stories is what's going to get you your good business, and I think that's a really good thing to happen. It doesn't mean necessarily it's going to always work, but I do like that they have that. Well, it's still fair. Those movies are really popular. I mean, say what you want.
I mean, debate the quality all you want. I mean, they still put money in the bank.
They're targeting a slightly different demo with that. But then again, with Transformers, not only do you have the movies, they have all of the different TV shows as well, which are I think a little bit more geared towards and the comics, which I think are a little bit more geared towards that core audience, rather than being a little bit more mainstream. But I think they do recognize that how important that story is. I mean, just look at them bringing on Megan McCarthy from Pony to kind of be the executive of storytelling for them. I mean, we actually have an executive of storytelling that Megan McCarthy does. So I think it's an important thing that at the very least, I'm not saying they're always going to be successful or do the right thing in regards to that. But I do appreciate the effort that they're putting into trying to push good storytelling first, and then let the toys follow from that.
And I think it's going to be interesting to see, because that investor thing, I didn't really listen to it. I know you did for the most part, Rain. They mentioned that they want to do future movies, not just on MLP, because obviously, we have the MLP movie out this year, but from like 2020, they want to put out a movie every year.
They want to.
Not sure how well that will be.
Yeah, it's not like they're going to. They said that it is their goal that by 2020 they want to be able to put out one animated feature a year.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be to do with MLP.
Yeah, I mean, and Hanazuki, Transformers, etc.
I think when the MLP movie was first announced, I think it was essentially done basically to recognise the success of the show. And I think, obviously, to make toys from that was obviously going to be a factor as well. It's interesting to think that since then, because they pretty much said, I believe, is it Brian Goldner, the chief exec of Hasbro, basically said that the film was going to be made on a fairly limited budget. It was not. It was going to effectively, what he was basically saying is possibly to alleviate fears from the investors, to say it was going to be as cost effective as possible. And now I begin to wonder whether a lot of people got cold feet from the announcement of this MLP movie, because the original MLP movie bombed pretty hard at the box office in the 80s. It's actually statistically one of the biggest bombs of that decade. Then again, so was the Transformers film, and it was why the G.I. Joe film ended up being straight to video, not a theatrical release, but because they'd already started production of that film, and obviously it was going to cost more to stop than it was to release it, at least in some form. But anyway, history lesson aside, what I think happened when they actually finally got to start making the MLP movie, I think Hasbro realized that, hang on a minute, we've got something here that could be really, really good. Now, that's not to say it will end up being good. We don't know until it comes out, but it just seems to me that more people were getting involved that were from very strong experience from fields like Disney. We have Michael Gagne, who was basically like a right-hand man to Don Bluth in the past. We have people involved like Rita Hassel, who obviously helped write Toy Story 2 and Mulan. And we have I can't think of his name. The guy that helped do the first treatment for Ice Age, he was involved, and he's now going to be a credited writer. And that, I think. Oh, and then you look at the trailers and you see the type of animation. The fact they even went to the effort of going to use a whole new animation program and didn't just use like touched up Flash assets for this movie. I think it's a case that Hasbro are really putting a lot more money and effort in than they were originally letting on, and I think it's a case of they've managed to convince the shareholders and perhaps other people that this was a project that's going to be much more than what it was originally perhaps intended to be, or it maybe this was originally always the case and they just made it a softer announcement when they first did it, just to basically
Bamboozled again.
it does interest
Damn
it does
Hasbro.
interest me.
Well, I think a lot of the stuff, I totally agree with Matt there. That I think that as production's gone on and they've kind of maybe been more and more keen on what they were seeing from the early production of the show, and with the staff that's involved with it from the show, it doesn't surprise me that they're putting a lot of effort that would have caused them to want to spend more money. But I also think, going back to Golner's original comment about it, was along the lines of, the reason why we're doing this now is we feel like technology has progressed in such a way that we can do a good 2D animated movie cheaply. So still be good, but do it cheaper than you would have been able to 10 years ago. And originally I thought that they were just referring to just using Flash because we already have all the assets, and just spend more time and money animating it to make it look even better, but still you reuse the old assets. But I think maybe they were just referring to software tools like Toon Boom now do make it a lot easier and cheaper to do more traditional animation cheaply than it would have been even 5-10 years ago, because of the software advancements that have happened, like Toon Boom. So that might have not even been the original case, and they might have been planning to do something like that all along. But I do agree. I think they've put a lot more money into this time. I mean, look at the talent they brought on, the guest stars they've brought on, how the animation looks and how fluid it looks, the music, how they're using an actual live instruments for both the songs and the score for it. They're definitely putting a lot of money into it. I have no idea how true it is, but I know that on 4chan someone had posted the budget was like $50 million, I think.
$65 million,
65,
which
okay.
I still let me put it like this: the budget for the Emoji Movie, ignore the quality of the movie, and we all know it's shit, whatever. But the movie's budget was guesstimate. Because don't forget, all these budgets that are posted on places, they are best guesses, I believe.
Yeah,
I mean, there might be announcements from the studio saying roughly what they spent on movies. I don't know. I think that is normally a fairly guarded thing, because I think they don't like, some investors don't like to mention too much about how much they're sinking into a movie. But the Emoji Movie was predicted to have a budget of $50 million, which, if the pony budget ends up being true, then that is considerably more than I was expecting. My best guess for the budget for this movie was going to be between $10 and $20 million.
Yeah, I think I was writing more along the 20 to 30 range myself. But yeah, 60, that's a lot. It's like 65, that's a good amount. That's not a shy amount for an animated movie, especially for one that looks as good as it is from the trailer. Another thing has changed, because we kind of hinted on this when we were talking about Hasbro here itself. One of the big changes I've noticed the past 2.5 years is with the toys. There was a time when I didn't own a single toy, and it wasn't that I didn't like the show or was embarrassed to buy them or anything like that. It was just nothing really appealed to me, because the original Brushables were just kind of meh. I mean, none of the real sets, but I now have like an overflowing 2 shelves of toys and figures for it. I mean, it kind of started with the Funko Pops, but just the past 2 years, they've started doing a lot more in-house. They have so many different collections outside of the normal pony toys. They have the Friendship is Magic collection, the fan series things. Now they have Guardians of Harmony, and I think that's one of the biggest changes I've actually seen in the show. Even over the show itself, I think I've seen more change the past 2.5 years in the toys and the focus on the toys. They're becoming less let's make a toy and maybe they'll shove it into an episode sometime in the future, and more, especially with the Friendship is Magic line. The Friendship is Magic collection, I guess it's the name, where they're actually taking past episodes and making toys based off them. Not the other way around. They're taking like the Nightmare Night stuff. Let's make a collection out of that. Oh, here's Applejack's Farm, making a collection out of that. And they're actually using characters, stories, and locations from the show and making toys out of them, which I think is fantastic. I think it works a lot better to let the show kind of do what they want and not and make toys out of that, rather than make a toy and see if we can fit it into an episode, like the Swan toy. Like, let's try and fit that in an episode randomly someplace, or the helicopter. And you have that. You have the fan series ones, which are geared a lot more towards the older fan base, and something you'd see them usually license stuff out for the past. But now Hasbro is actually making this themselves, and we get those incredible Discord and Luna and Celestia gigantic figures, and Chrysalis as well. And then not to even mention the Guardians of Harmony line, and how now not only they're focusing on maybe taking more cues from the show, but now also focusing on maybe not just marketing these toys to girls, but just marketing them in general as toys for anyone that would want them, and featuring girls in their ads, but also featuring some boys in it, and not trying to like push an agenda on, we're just gonna show boys playing with pony toys and that's it, or trying to take away that from girls. They're literally just saying, hey, these toys are for anyone who wants to play for them, and they've really changed their advertising to match that, which I can really respect.
Do you think, in that regard, because that is something that has sort of come since basically Triple E has come along, and we were going to talk about like the fandom in general as well, but also about perhaps Hasbro and what they've been doing with I think I did mention that we would perhaps talk about them doing toys, and I won't go too in depth because I think it's something that we should perhaps talk about in a future episode of maybe Triple E or just in general at some point on the site. It's interesting to see Hasbro like adding lines such as the Guardians of Harmony line, the fan series line. I mean, most of the stuff that I own to do with the show is from those lines, or the Funko like more show accurate figures that they released. Sadly they stopped doing them, which is a shame. But yeah, I mean, I have these massive statues of Discord and Queen Chrysalis. I mean, who would have thought that 5, 6, 7 years later after the show aired, we would have massive detailed statues of not just the ponies from the show, but the villains. None of the villains from G1 of MLP had any kind of toy related to them released, as far as I'm aware. Not even from the movie. And that is a huge change in of itself. And I really respect what decisions Hasbro have made. I believe I think it was about a year or two ago they actually changed who was like in charge of like the toy.
It was about 2 years ago. It was like half a year before all these toy lines started changing.
Whoever they hired, they made the right choice. That's all I'll say. They made the right choice.
Mm-hmm. And it's just like seeing not just all these dolls, like the brushable dolls, but then seeing actual like big play sets, and then seeing toys that articulate, and seeing toys that actually do stuff, like more like action figures, like a lot of the stuff in the Guardians of Harmony line is great, because I know that even people that are in the show's quote target demographic, there's plenty of young girls and children out there that would love stuff like that, more than just being able to brush a pony's hair. And I love that they're giving them these options. They still have brushable lines, and they still have a lot of the similar toys they had before, although they've greatly improved the molds on them to make them look a lot more appealing and a lot more like the show. But then offering these, different kind of options of play depending on what the kid or adult might want to do with it. So I think they've really improved their vision of it. They've kind of doubled down on their toys and really expanded their lines. I mean, we were mentioning the Equestria Girls minis on them. They had the old Equestria Girls dolls, which looked like hideous, and that's one of the few toy lines from Pony that I'll actually say legitimately I don't like, because those things looked almost appalling in their molds. And they've more or less 100% gotten rid of them now. All the new Equestria Girls toys that came out this year are the minis, and the mini size, which look a lot more appealing. They're more caricatures.
More show accurate as well in general.
Yeah, they're caricatured, but yet they still look more show accurate somehow because the other ones were that bad. But yeah, they've done nothing but improve their toy line, which is great, because I think that if they're looking, obviously Hasbro is most concerned about selling toys and making their money off of that, because they're certainly not going to make a ton of money off the show itself. The show is just an advertisement for toys, a very good advertisement, but an advertisement nonetheless for toys. So I'm happy to see them actively working to improve those toys rather than just kind of sitting on their laurels and just hoping that little girls are just going to buy anything they can shit out. I'm glad that they have the foresight here to actually say, no, we can do better here, and have done a lot of improvements both on the variety and the quality of their toys. Yeah, I guess Equestria Girls is something else that has gone through a lot of changes the past 2 years as well, or just really the past year here. And it's something we'll talk about on the next This Week in Pony, how that's continuing to evolve and change there. I mean, of course, they first kind of started out with the movies and theaters, and then it was just kind of direct to DVD, and then Legend of Everfree was Netflix premiere for that. And then this year they had the 3 shorts, or the 3 specials, I guess, and a bunch of shorts now that I was kind of concerned, because I knew that the first special they had this year was already produced a couple years ago, the Dance Magic one. So I'm like, okay, so that means technically they're only producing 2 22-minute episodes, which is less than content than they've produced in past years, but they seem to have produced a boat ton more shorts now that they're premiering throughout August, which will probably, when all said and done, time-wise, get them back up to like a full movie worth of production length.
And also splitting the production of the shorts with Boulder.
Yeah, I think that's just. I think that's trying to alleviate some pain there on DHX. There.
I do wonder whether the Equestria Girls show will have production from Boulder, and that these shorts are essentially breaking them into using like the models and just getting used to how they animate and that.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be a shock. And honestly, I think Boulder have done a pretty good job, really. And I mean, I have a fair amount of respect for Boulder. I like a lot of their work. I like the Amazing World of Gumball, which obviously I think they mostly only worked on the first season of that show, which I think they just helped like break in. Cartoon Network having a presence in Europe, and in particular in the UK and Ireland, but yeah, I mean, I still like their work on the Danger Mouse reboot. I have a soft spot for that show, as you may imagine. I mean, not just because it's British based, but it's a show that doesn't get enough love, I think, because I think it's a reboot done right, and there's not many that have done that really recently, and I think it deserves more credit for what it's done than it necessarily has had. So
Maud must be so proud of her, of Boulder.
Oh God! You know what the big competition will be? It'll be Tom Productions.
I'm trying to think. Is there any other topics about the past kind of 2 years here that of changes that anyone wanted to bring up?
I really can't think of anything specific, to be honest.
Yeah, I think we've kind of covered the toys, the show, us, Triple E. It's kind of, and a bunch of other stuff. So,
have we gone over the music?
Not specifically. No,
Yeah, I think we've got a spare 10 hours.
I mean, I don't really know. I don't think the music in the show has really changed that much in the past 2.5 years. I mean, it's still very high quality. It's great to see them continuing to break into new styles and try out new styles of music, both in the score and the songs. Like It's Gonna Work back in season 5 for that kind of a little bit more like Indian sort of style, Bollywood style of big show number. That was definitely different from the show. I like seeing them break and try different genres. Like this year we had the Big Mac versus the Justin Bieber pony one. Had a lot of very poppy, Feather Bangs, a lot of very poppy stuff, and something that's different for the show. I don't really know if there's really much I can comment based on that. I mean, it's just been insanely good quality as always in the songs. The scores continue to utilize motifs. We've kind of drifted away now in season 6 and season 7 from the Friendship is Magic motif, which was very prominent in season 4 into season 5. Although hilariously enough, it was brought back in today's episode, very, very fittingly, as we're kind of going back to season 4 in today's episode. But we've introduced a lot of new themes, a lot of new motifs. I think one of the big, one thing we haven't really discussed, and we said we were going to discuss it like 2 hours ago, and we didn't, and that's Starlight, because that is probably the biggest change in the show since season 5. Since she was just introduced at the beginning of season 5 when we were starting to do all of this as a villain, and now she's sort of like a secondary main character to the show, and I think that's one of the things that has changed music-wise is her leitmotif has developed from this very kind of sly, kind of something's wrong, but it's really peppy tune from season 5, and then when she was reformed, she had like a reformed motif that was a little bit more cautious and optimistic and worrying, and that's kind of evolved since then. But yeah, is there anything that anyone wants to mention with Starlight? Because I know that's something we said we were going to discuss, and we kind of got away from it.
I still love how the fact that even now, I mean, she's been in the show for like nearly 2 years now, and the hate for her is still just as salty as ever.
I want to get away from what other people say about her, because that seems to be more the thing. Whenever anyone mentions about Starlight, it's like, oh, just you wait for the haters to come around. Oh, I bet there's going to be some salty comments about this because she's in this episode. I mean, I know we've been doing that as a bit of a joke, and the problem is the fact that it's actually true, kind of, that alludes me to basically, me being a bit more distant from the fandom than I've that as I am, but as an actual opinion right now for what I think about Starlight, I'm okay with her. I'm not going to say she's not my favorite character or anything. I'm not going to say she is, and I think that may be the fact that she's only been around since season 5. So it's a case of she's less developed than other characters in the show, like the CMC and the main 6 and Spike, and hell, even the princesses. Even though they've had a lot less screen time in all that time, we've at least had little tiny snippets of them here and there. With Starlight, she's had 2 seasons, and that's it. And the thing is, I think a lot of people, the season 5 premiere, in terms of tone for the show, was it's a little bit, I would say it's a little bit darker than many other episodes in the show, and it had a lot more deeper themes that were running just below the surface of what was going on in the episode, which both made it an excellent episode in terms of that, but also you could say it was necessarily an episode that was a little bit more mature, and perhaps sometimes too mature than necessarily for the main demographic at times. But I think on a surface level, the episode worked just fine. But there was a lot more deeper things going on in that episode than some of the other episodes in the show. That's not a criticism of other episodes or even the premiere of season 5. It's just how it fell. And I think that Starlight was a wonderfully well performed and well seen villain that had an idea that was based on the fact of the ponies in Equestria all have different talents based upon their cutie marks. What if that was taken away? Essentially, was basically what the season 5 premiere basically indulged itself in, and asked the questions of how things would necessarily be if we had a society where everyone was equal, or everyone had no cutie mark or the same cutie mark. and I think it delved into those things, you know, pretty well. And a lot of people really liked Starlight as a villain there. And I think the fact that in the season 5 finale is where a lot of the divisiveness came about, just for the simple fact that they decided to reform her, and perhaps reform her more quickly or at all, when people felt that she would be work as a better foil to Twilight. But I think she still works as a foil to Twilight. She doesn't necessarily always agree with Twilight's methods, or she will do things that Twilight would never think of doing or even dream of doing. And I think that is something that I think the show, that is where I think the great conflicts and the great like stories from the show, there will be, if the good episodes that we will get will have a great playing off from those characters, like we've had with the main 6. I mean, all of the main 6 are very different characters, as we've, funnily enough, as they described in today's episode. It's almost like they fucking knew we were going to do something like this for Triple E today. But you know, it's very interesting to see how they you know, the thing is though, has really Starlight really changed since she was really a villain in season 5? You know, in terms of how she goes about things, how she does things. She's still quite spontaneous. You know what I mean? She's still spontaneous. Yeah. She's still quite. She's a lot more magically inclined, and she will try and solve things with her magic, and she is still very magically adept and stuff like that. But she's also learned about friendship as well, just like any of the other main 6 characters, or the CMC, or whoever that we've had focused on an episode in the show. You know, she's had this friendship that's blossomed with Trixie, which, you know, something that I think we should come to, the fact that secondary characters have become a thing. How the hell they managed to make Trixie into a character I like watching, I don't know, but props to the fucking writers for doing that. And not that I hated her before, but I you know, I was kind of, you know, in the middle about her. I didn't hate her, but I weren't particularly like really looking forward to seeing her. But now I really do look forward to seeing another Trixie episode. You know, I really hope they do more, and I do more with her, because they've managed to have her be much more enjoyable. And I think, you know, when they had the season 6 finale, I think having a different focus instead of just the main 6, I think is a very good thing for the future of the show. The show is not scared to rely just on a central cast forever.
And I do like how they introduced Starlight as well as a character as well, because a lot of episode ideas that they would have been able to utilize with Twilight really can't be utilized with her, as you know, since she's a, you know, princess of friendship and all that. So a lot of story ideas that originally might have worked better with Twilight might actually would work better with Starlight as the main central character of focus.
Not to mention, it's nice to have some episodes focused on, like Starlight in this case, and a new character, like organically making new friends, like we saw with Trixie, and you know, and some of the other people. Yeah,
I'm sorry, but the Trixie and Discord dynamic is I think it's one that's got so much fucking potential that I just want a sitcom with just her, him, Trixie, and Fluttershy all being roommates. I would watch the shit out of that.
But it's just like it's something that we didn't really see in the show, because let's not forget that Twilight was kind of pushed into her friendships in the first episode of the show. We saw her getting to know them better, I guess, as this first season went on, and we got to see their friendships grow. But you never really. She was just kind of. They were her friends now within the first episode, because she was kind of shoved into it. It's nice to see stuff like with Starlight and Trixie and stuff, where they're kind of organically seeing this friendship blossom, and then seeing it falter as Trixie's kind of just using her to try and get back at Twilight, and seeing it recover. It was just a very kind of cool thing to see that we hadn't really seen that much in the show before, and we wouldn't have been able to see from Twilight and her friends.
Also, we got a new princess in Flurry Heart as well.
Yeah, that happened.
Yep.
I still loved that episode with her with Twilight. Yeah, she perhaps acted a bit more grown up for a young foal than she did. But hey, magic, and she's an alicorn, baby.
Yeah, that's not the first time
I'll
that's
take
happened.
it. To be fair, Twilight was pretty damn smart as a filly as well. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, going back to the Baby Kicks episode,
Or even a
then,
foal.
I mean,
oh yeah, but it's a cartoon. That's just
Or-
how it is. And
or-
I
or-
still found it amusing.
or last week's episode with Pear Butter and Bright Mac when they're fillies.
All hail Princess McFlurry. She's the best flavour of McFlurry.
But yeah, it's definitely been a kind of a dynamic change, but I think they've kind of worked Starlight in fairly well to it. They pretty much treated her like any other character, where there's going to be some episodes where she has the focus, there's going to be episodes where she doesn't have the focus or isn't there. I think we've seen her better in Season 7 than we have in Season 6, where Season 6 she kind of just wasn't there sometimes. We've seen her a lot more in Season 7, maybe a little bit better integrated in. But as you know, which would kind of make sense in universe as well. But it is, and they kind of poke fun at that in the final Equestria Girls special that they did with that, with her in it. But it's great to have her in there, and I think they've integrated her really well. They've been able to tell some stories with her that they wouldn't have been able to tell with Twilight or the rest of the main six there. And I think she's a good addition to the cast simply because of that. She still has a lot more to learn about friendship and her magic and stuff, and it gives Twilight sort of something to do as well in terms of being her mentor. Yeah, Sunset's a little different, being that Sunset kind of took over as the leader of the group there. She kind of took over as the main character, where
She is basically the Twilight Sparkle of Equestria Girls, essentially,
Yeah.
which is ironic considering there is a Twilight Sparkle in that show. But the Twilight there is more of a secondary character, really, in Equestria Girls, which is I find actually kind of fascinating. But the thing is, though, Sunset is so very different, and if you want the biggest difference, is just watch Monday Blues. I love that. It's fucking brilliant.
That was a good short.
Also, can I just say yesterday's short Electric Applejack song I didn't know I wanted.
Yes. Oh, that
Rain
was so
Shadow
great.
will convert you to the Applejack side yet. And
I'll be
Matt.
honest. I will say this now. I have more of an appreciation for Applejack as a character now than when I first started watching the show. The first character I got drawn to was, funnily enough, not Applejack. It wasn't Fluttershy. It was Rainbow Dash. And that's not really a surprise, because a lot of bronies will say that Rainbow Dash is one of those characters that drew them in. And the funny thing is, though, the first episode I watched of this show was Full Weather Friends, and obviously that was a Applejack and Rainbow Dash episode, which had Twilight Sparkle in it because it's a season 1 episode. Fuck you, it has to have Twilight Sparkle in it. But yeah, anyway. That was just interesting to me to see. This is better than I was expecting. This is a lot more not really completely girly. I mean, this is a conflict that could have been in any show. And basically, when I got to Dragonshy, that was the turning point and essentially turned me into a big fan of Fluttershy. And I think the episode that cemented that was Hurricane Fluttershy, which even after all this time, and I've said how great some of the episodes are, it may not be the best episode to me in terms of quality, but it is the most important episode to me, and I have a real personal affinity for that episode because it's the episode that made me basically fall in love with the show and fall in love with Fluttershy as a character, because a lot of people say, there's been a lot of episodes where Fluttershy has just basically got over her meekness or her shyness or whatever, and it's like, well, yeah, but that was kind of her character in the beginning, and there's not, I'm glad they've moved away from that now. And sometimes the conflicts have been different. I mean, sometimes they've been internal conflicts, like with, say, Philly Vanilli, or they're more outward conflicts, like in Hurricane Fluttershy, or putting your hoof down. But it's to me, it's someone that you know, this may sound strange considering how much I like butt into you guys here, or how much I even talk here on Triple E, or just in general, like with you guys here. But that's mostly a sign of me being incredibly comfortable around you all. I can be quite a meek individual when it comes to being out in public, and you know, it takes a lot for me to like get out of my shell. You know, people really need to get to really know me, or I just feel comfortable around them. And you know, I really relate to that when I see Fluttershy, and how I think the way they actually deal with her, how they do her character, is what impresses me the most, more than necessarily her character herself. Because in terms of, you know, the most grounded and like, you know, character that I find, you know, that's very, you know, you can get drawn into, yeah, Applejack is probably that character. But I find greatness in all of the main characters in this show, and that's the key thing. I don't particularly hate any real character on the show, and you know, we do the the twist joke, but on a more serious note, I just find the show incredibly difficult to hate, because it's for a show that's basically designed to sell toys. There's a lot less cynicism in it. I mean, that seems to be a big problem that a lot of corporate products that are put on like the big screen or on TV have a massive problem with. There's very little cynicism here. There does seem to be real genuine heart and craft put into these episodes, and that's you know, a great thing. And I think that you know, there's a lot of places that could learn from that. I mean, you know, Sony Pictures Animation is probably going to, you know, have some, like, you know, open lines of inquiry. You know, it'll be interesting to see how things, you know, move on from here in terms of an MLP. I mean, you know, this is a big year for the franchise, you know, with the movie and everything. And you know, I really hope the movie does well. I don't you know, I don't know how it will do in terms of, you know, critical consensus or box office or anything like that. I've got no crystal ball. I just hope that we have a movie that you can tell that people put their heart and soul in, and from what we've seen so far, that you know, that seems to be the case, and that's all I can ask for. If it turns out to be a poor story or whatever, then, you know, whatever. It's a tough thing. Just getting a movie made in the first place is a tough thing. Just ask Jendi Tadachowski, you know, with, you know, Popeye. Just getting something off the ground can be difficult because of, you know, internal politics at a company, or just the company just doesn't feel the product's going to sell. So, you know, I'm really glad that the MLP movie exists. And that's a great thing. What that means for the show going forward, well, we don't know, but we know that the show is definitely going to be continuing at least into season 8 regardless, which, you know, I think the fact that the show seems to be a bit more comfortable in knowing when it's, you know, if it's likely to be renewed a little bit further in time, certainly helps the show. Because if there's a show that was always perpetually thinking it was going to be cancelled, like Futurama, you always end up with having about 17 different series finales.
Yeah, so we should probably start wrapping. I mean, one of the things the other things we wanted to do here is, I have no idea if anyone is going to actually have any questions, but if anyone has any questions for any of us here that you want to ask, feel free to ask us anything here. If we don't, then we'll just kind of
not that one,
stuff
though.
up.
Or that one.
You can ask. Oh,
Definitely not that one.
I said they could ask us anything. I didn't say we would answer it. So I don't know if anyone ever had any questions for us here, or about us, or anything like that. If you don't, then I don't really care. I'm just we thought we'd put it in here at the end as a special episode 100 thing of Triple E here.
I have a question.
Why?
What? Why not?
Question. Why do you have a question?
Go ahead, Mr. Bell.
What is your in your professional subjective opinion? What is the meaning of life?
Pony. Scratch that. I'll be more specific. Applejack.
Yeah. I've always had to answer that. I've always had to ask that question during our BWB interview episodes. I've always had my my main three. That was usually either what was your favorite flavor of ice cream? You know, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, or other.
DM12s. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Quitting C. What is C? What is C?
DM12's asking what. Rain, DM12's asking, was there a time that you considered quitting CinemaQuestria back in the early days with all the BS that was discussed today?
With all the brony state that was discussed? I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Not really. No, not never seriously. There was times when I had to. I think all of us kind of had to step back and take a breather back then. It was one of those things where it was, as time went on, it got better. It was kind of those first 3 weeks, especially those first 3 episodes we streamed, was just insane. But I still really, even later on when we got to those kind of the last episodes we streamed, I think was Make New Friends But Keep Discord was the last one we did. It still was hard to do anything else in real life, just or here. Just between everything else we were doing and trying to set up for the stream, and like Matt said, I was still doing all of the scheduling and stuff, and that took, a whole day to do that and stuff. So, I think by that point Matt had taken on that, which was really helpful. So I didn't have to do that. It was stressful, and it was one of those things where when we had to stop streaming, it was kind of sad and depressing. Like, where do we go from here? We kind of had to do some soul searching as to like make a list of, well, what can we do now? What do we do now? Where do we go from here? But looking back of it, it was I think it was a very relieving experience to not have to have all of that pressure on anymore, to do all of that.
I mean, in terms of the site, it was probably one of the worst things to happen in terms of, being able to build a huge amount of people that come here. In terms of just for us as actual people with our lives on, because don't forget, we get no money for doing this. We do this out of the love of the show and being around all you people. We don't ask for any money. We also don't, we do this because we want to do this, or at least that's what I feel. That's a key thing, and I think
we like the show.
At the point, it was essentially particularly I think in Rain's case, it was essentially becoming a second job, and
yeah.
that's just, I mean, I know we all have to work and that, but I think when it's something like this and based around something that you originally were doing because you enjoyed it, you kind of start to lose that enjoyment. And I've admitted several times I had actually written that I was going to quit this site, and I did walk away from the site. It took people like, Mr. Ben, Brain Shadow here, and Jay Smith, and several others, too numerous to mention really, to basically say to me, look, we'll miss you if you're gone. And but I'm no one special. I'm just a person that enjoys a TV show that has.
You're more special than you give yourself credit for, man. Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah. And, it's great to have you on. So.
Even if I do butt in and make way too long rambly thoughts.
Yeah, it's better than silence.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things where I think that if we didn't have to stop streaming Pony, I probably would have continued. I don't really see much that would have made it stop, because there were so many people on that time watching and depending on us in order to have that discussion and stuff. Kind of wouldn't have been reasonable or nice to stop doing that. So probably would have kept doing it. I don't think would have walked away, but I'm glad we did in the end. I'm glad that we were kind of forced to stop, because it's not easy. It's one of those things where you can go to a streaming site and be like, oh, I can do that. It's not that hard. And it's kind of what I did walking into it. But no, you realize very quickly why a lot of people can get very irritated pretty quickly if they're on staff at one of these places, because it is a lot of work, and it's and especially when you are doing that and you have 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, over 10,000 people in the chat, it can be stressful. It could have been a lot worse if we would have gotten worse people, but it was pretty bad.
I will have to say this, going a little bit off of a little thing of what I was saying with whatchamacallit, the chat room. I do appreciate the fact that, like what you mentioned, we do have that smaller thing here because the cease and desist was a major blow to us in terms of being able to stream the show, but that was really more. While it was a major blow, it was really more just a blessing in disguise because, like I was mentioning, it was getting to the point where I was originally excited to see all those people in our chat room because I was like, cool, we might get some new regular people here. We might be able to get some. I didn't want to expand for the sake of expanding or anything like that, but I knew we were still a small site. I knew we were still kind of blossoming, and I figured that if we can draw people in with Pony, we might be able to keep them with some of our other regular stuff, like your other weekly Monday stuff that you were showing at the time, like the Pokemon shows that you were streaming, my video game streams that I would do every so often. I was hoping to maybe, expand my own base, as selfish as that might sound. I was hoping that we would, be able to, get people to subscribe to your YouTube channel. We would be able to get people to subscribe to us, and individually maybe have our little fan bases grow. But at the same time, it was getting to the points where when I was originally seeing that number grow from like 2,000 to 3,000 to 5,000, I was like originally going from like, yes, okay, this is exciting, to where it was like getting to be 7,000, 8,000, 10,000, and then that
Over 9,000.
yeah, it's like that. It's like that. Oh yes is like, or that. Oh shit is more like, oh shit.
Yeah. And it kind of gets to those things when you're trying to moderate a chat that is that large. You don't get to enjoy the episode. You barely get to watch the episode. Your eyes are trying to go between this episode. For my part, it's like going between the episode, going between the stream, and making sure everything's okay with that, and going between the chat and making sure everything's okay with that. You don't get to enjoy the episodes at all, and you really don't get to do it until you get to rewatch it again by yourself. And and I think that's one of the coolest things about now, where we're just kind of get together and chat over it together. Since then I've definitely been able to actually enjoy the episodes more, and actually talk to everyone here during the episodes and have discussions during it. I find it to be a lot more enjoyable than what it was then.
One of the things that I have to admit in regards to my moderating days, my major moderating days when we had like all those major thousands of people, I can appreciate the fact that I can make a comment in the chat room now and not have it like immediately zip up off the top of the screen.
Bye-bye.
Because like several thousand people were trying to comment all at once. Yeah. And the same thing also helps in trying to moderate, because someone could say something offensive and then I have to try to scroll back up on the chat room, and since everyone's still continuing the chat room, that comments keep getting pushed further and further up, and I have to try to scrub the freaking chat room just to find that one comment, so I can find that one character and click on his name and find out his host mask and kick him from the chat room if need be.
Yeah, so. Half the time is just trying to do stuff like that, and make sure you kick the right person too. Don't click on the person below them, and it's like, thankfully we had a lot of good tools and scripts, but it was just it's still, you're spending most of your time during the episode doing stuff like that, and this is with a fairly well-behaved chat, group of people chatting.
And what complicated things for me is I ended up taking on doing social media stuff on Twitter. So I was looking at the episode, looking at the chat, looking at questions that were being sent to us about, I can't receive, I'm having trouble getting the stream to work on Twitter. I don't know how I did it. I honestly don't know how I did it.
You didn't watch the episode. That's what happened.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people said to me after the episode, "So Matt, what did you think to the episode?" And I'm like, I think I enjoyed it. Question mark? I don't know. It had some ponies in it. That's all I know.
It's like one of those things where it's like I enjoyed doing it, and if I got that chance again to go back and do that again, I would do it again. But I think it's personally better to just kind of enjoy watching it.
Yeah, if I had the chance to go back and relive that, here for the CQ days, definitely. But and the thing is that I don't regret that it happened. I mean, I'm glad that it gave me a lot of practical experience, But like I mentioned in the chat room, I did my time in the trenches, man. it
And it's like
was a blast when it happened, but it's not something I'd want to do.
And we don't
again.
normally talk about the scenes just for the specific reason. Like I don't usually like bringing it up outside of like special things like this because we've kind of moved past it. We had to deal with that for a couple months afterwards, especially as people slowly started realizing that we couldn't show it anymore, and then we had to keep explaining over and over and over again. And somehow, even like this year, people still come in expecting us to show it. Like, where have you been the past 2 years? So it's not that we don't necessarily want to, but it's just like we want to move on from it too, which is why we kind of try and put any questions about it behind us. It's just we want to do what we're focusing on now and not kind of what we did in the past.
But yeah, one of the reasons, like I said, why I'm glad that we don't do the Steven Universe shows live anymore is, now here's the thing, and I want to be perfectly clear on this. I have no problem with us doing a show. I have no problem with us moderating the chat room, and I love my job as a moderator. I love looking over the chat room. I love being able to help people and direct people and answer questions for people. But when it gets to the point to where I'm being personally attacked, to where I'm being not just insulted, but people are sending me direct messages, private messages, about how I am being some sort of racist because of some stupid bullshit, because of some bullshit reasoning, because, hey, we don't allow, other languages outside of English to be spoken on our chat room, then
Because we don't speak any other languages.
and that's the thing. I have no problem with explaining rules why we do it, but the problem is, and as it was, the one night that we had that episode where like a whole bunch of those people were calling us racist. I went out to go eat that last night, that one night, and I actually sat in my car with my cell phone recording myself saying, "Hey guys, this is Mr. Ben of CinemaQuestria here. I understand that some people may have a rule or have issue with the rule that we have on our site. This is why we have this rule, and I understand that you may not like it, but there are other web streaming sites that you can go to if you don't like it here. This is why we have this here, and this is why we have our rules. We have 10 moderators on chat. Maybe only one of those 10 moderators actually speaks another language outside of English, and and even then, it's just, I kind of got the feeling the reason why I never really went with that, never really fully made a professional video on that is because it's like sometimes we have our rules. We have our people we tell people to go see the rules, and people will more than just ignore you. We could probably have a big old freaking neon sign flashing, say, "This is why we do things," and people will just blithely ignore it. Because people are morons.
Going back up here, I don't want to miss somebody's questions. DM12 asked, "What's your favorite streaming day or night on CQ other than Saturday?" Well, I mean, too, I love doing Tripoli. It's fun just being able to talk about the episodes and give our opinions on it in a way that we don't feel like no one is listening, just speaking to a void or something. Even if it's just a small group of people here, it's nice to be able to discuss that. And I really enjoy doing the riffs. I still enjoy doing the riffs. When we get a really good movie on that and we get all of us together and riffing on it, that's really fun. Like the Jetsons one last weekend was, oh my god.
Oh yeah, that's just what the fuck, that movie. Jesus Christ. But the thing is, I mean, I've enjoyed doing, actually speaking about, like, on a relation to that, I enjoyed doing the Sunday streams I have done here in the past, like the Scooby-Doo straight-to-video movies, because, I know we laugh about Moon Monster Madness and the crossovers with WWE, but there was some genuinely good straight to video Scooby stuff, and not just the early stuff. There was some later ones that were pretty decent too. So I enjoyed doing that, and I definitely enjoyed earlier on streaming like Futurama and things like that. But in terms of the shows here, I've enjoyed I enjoyed when BWE was still a thing here on CQ, and I obviously enjoy CQ refs, and I enjoy being involved with all these things. I mean, if I didn't, I wouldn't turn up. That's just a fit. That's the truth. If we didn't enjoy doing these things, we wouldn't do these things.
Yeah. To answer Dark Knight 2 Enigma's question about why we keep moving forward and not just continue on with the site, but sticking with the fandom. I guess kind of like one of my things is, what else am I going to do? I mean, I enjoy having an outlet to discuss the show. If I stop doing it here, then I'll just go back to not doing what I was doing before. I was at part CQ here and just not really discussing it anywhere, and which is no fun. It's in terms of sticking with the fandom, I would say that you all here at CQ, both on staff and everyone else, would probably be the main reason stuck with the fandom, is because it's just like, even if all hellfire is breaking loose outside, I can say that in here, at least most people here are, fairly level-headed, even if we disagree sometimes. So it's easy to have a discussion on even controversial episodes here, where in other places outside of here, it might kind of blossom into just people yelling back and forth constantly. So I think in terms of sticking with the fandom, just being able to discuss the show with you all here has helped that. And it's one of the reasons I stick around. And I enjoy being around y'all. And I mean, if I stop doing stuff here, then just go back to being by yourself and talking to yourself.
There's a reason I hang out with you losers every day, but that's because I love you all.
I mean, it's not just necessarily the shows I enjoy doing here. It's the stuff that we've shown here that I would probably have never myself ever watched. I think the best example is the one that's just recently finished up, Glitter Force. I would have probably never watched that ever in my entire life, until Rain Shadow said, "Hey, this was suggested to me on Netflix." I just started watching it, and I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of almost like a similar sort of thing as to how most people probably discovered Friendship as Magic originally. Yeah. It's like, oh, I heard some people said that this was actually pretty good, so I watched it, and to my surprise, it's actually really good.
and they have another one coming out in just a couple of weeks that we're going to have to be showing now. It's not going to be the same exact thing, but it's still dubbed by Studiopolis, so I'm kind of interested to see where they'll take it.
And it's still based, because all the pre-kills are different each time anyway. They have a different set of characters every time. It's a bit, think Power Rangers, but with more magical girls and more puff.
But if they keep that same kind of wit that the dub of the original Glitter Force had, that it might still be enjoyable, and so I'm interested to see what they do with it. It speaks to how popular that must have been for them to actually say, go ahead and say, hey, let's dub another one.
And see, going back to the earlier question that DM12 asked, one thing that I love streaming, unfortunately, I can't do the availability of the subs. I think my other favorite stream, even of course I've got power playback, but I really enjoyed running Game Center and having you guys react, but unfortunately that's not my control, because I've run out of subs, and the subbers are kind of, I think it's because the subbers aren't doing it episode by episode. I think they do it on a basis as to which episodes they want to do, because they're subbing them out of order, so yeah.
Those guys need more materials. Those submarines don't build themselves.
What?
It's a joke, man. Play on words, if you will.
I have a question for the rest of you. Who out of the CinemaQuestria stuff would you ship together?
Me and Everlasting Joy. OTP.
Matt and his penis fan.
Yeah, but the penis fan isn't a member of staff on the site.
Yes, it is.
Although it might as well
to a
be.
lesser extent.
It's the one that blows the most hot air.
What, me or the fan?
The fan. Ouch. That self-burn. Oh my gosh.
I'd ship myself with myself. No, I wouldn't actually, because I'm not like Rainbow Dash.
It's the one true pairing.
EJ in the kit. EJ in the window.
EJ and Scooter Chicken.
Uh-oh.
The OTP.
Just be thankful he's not
Why do you think?
listening
Why do you
on
think?
this.
Why do you think
Yes, he
he's so
just
defensive of?
posted.
Why do you think he's so defensive of Scooter Chicken? Obviously.
Yeah, he likes Scootaloo that much.
I don't know if you ask
He just thinks it's a burn every time I say it. When really I just like Scootaloo so much, and she just reminds me of succulent, tasty morsels of chicken.
I don't know. If you ask me, I think he's got a thing for Fluttertree better.
You know, he is listening. There we go. Everlasting joy.
Yeah, here it comes. Here it comes.
Oh no! No, he.
Oh, he threw Van out the window first.
Everyone, shh. He doesn't have to know. Oh God. Any other final questions before we kind of wrap this up? We've been going on for a while, so probably start wrapping it up unless someone has any other questions.
I have a question for Rain Shadow. When you first set up to do Triple E, was what we ended up more what you sort of initially envisioned for the show, or was it different, better, worse, or you know, just how you sort of, you know, it sort of panned out? And what do you think will play out for the future for the show? You know, what do you have any changes that you may consider doing, or do you think that we're in a happy place where we are right now?
I mean, I guess it's about what I expected it to be. We kind of laid out before we started. This was us kind of trying to rush and find something to do after the C&D, and kind of like, oh, well, we can just discuss new episodes. We don't have to show them. We can just kind of discuss them, especially if it's right after they premiered. So I mean, in that we kind of made a list of the topics kind of we wanted to discuss for each episode, kind of because the plan was originally, let's discuss the episodes like we did in Babble with Bronies, but would be more recent episodes, so we don't have to necessarily won't watch them again since we can't show the episodes again. And let's do it in such a way where we don't have to do the amount of planning that EJ did then every single week, because that was kind of the thing. I wanted to do a discussion show, but I didn't want to have this eat up like a billion hours of my life trying to plan for it. So we kind of made different categories that we could kind of keep it semi-organized without having to do a lot of research into it. I think it pretty much is about what I expected it or wanted it to be there. I'd always like more people to participate in the discussion and in the chat room, but I think, with the group we usually have some really good discussions, especially on the episodes that need them. There's some episodes where it's like there's not a lot to discuss, but then there's other episodes where there's a lot to discuss, and it's really, really enjoyable and just as fun as I thought it would be. I don't really think it differs too much from what I expected. It's a pretty simple concept, and I think, we kind of pulled it off really, really well. As for the future, I don't really see the need to really change much with it in terms of the format of it. Now that we're on Discord now, I've kind of changed. I'm testing out a different thing now, so hopefully it should be like actually posting the images people post in chat now. So if you're watching a recording of this, you don't have to see nothing when we're discussing something, which is nice. Just little improvements like that as we get along to hopefully try and make it better. As we started streaming directly to YouTube, which helps with getting it, the backups and the recordings up quicker than it used to be. Really, always open to more ideas and suggestions for it. But I think we got something pretty good going. In the future, we still got to finish up season 7 here. We'll have the movie to talk about eventually. At some point, we'll have to decide when we want to do that. The Equestria Girls shorts we still got to discuss. We still got to finish up all of the second half of season 4. There's a lot of stuff to discuss then. And then after that, I wouldn't mind going back to seasons 1 and 2, since we kind of started our flashbacks on season 3 since Babble with Bronies did 1 and 2. But I think it's been long enough now that by the time we get there, it would be nice to kind of go back and revisit the first 2 seasons as well for discussion in future hiatuses. And of course, we still got season 8 to discuss, and the Equestria Girls I don't even know how we're gonna.
And
I don't know how we're gonna balance the show.
How are we gonna do the when we have a pony regular series and an Equestria Girl series?
I know. It's like it's gonna be interesting.
And what are we gonna are we gonna call that HEE human equine examination?
We'll just cross out the equine.
Episode
The question
examination.
is, since the Equestria Girls series is going to be a YouTube series, should we just schedule doing live chats and we just all watch on YouTube simultaneously?
I mean, that would be pretty easy to do. I mean, I don't know if we could embed it or not. That's kind of coasting on the line there because we're not really streaming it. But
I mean,
No, we're just linking to something that's officially still going to go on your totals, Hasbro.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we're not stepping on your toes.
it'll be a little easier.
Kind of.
It'll be a little easier because we're not going to have to deal with licking the streams. Everyone can just, I guess it depends on if they're regional.
Licking the streams.
Yes, lick the streams. I believe that's a sticky post in one of the Slack chats still. From all the way back in 2015.
Hang on. Oh, I still have my Slack up. I can soon tell you. It's under the Saturday event one. Yeah, all the rooms are linked. It doesn't say when you posted that though.
It was sometime when we were still streaming the show.
Yeah,
But
Yeah, you meant to say are all the rooms locked, and that was just one hell of a typo. We couldn't help but rag you on.
but yeah, it was it'd be a little. I guess it'd be a little easier because everyone, as long as they don't like region lock the things that badly, everyone can just kind of pull up the link and press play at the same time.
Fuck you, Hasbro, if you do that in advance.
I'm hoping not, because this is supposed to be something new. They shouldn't have any licensing agreements for that. And I think Hanazuki, they post it worldwide pretty quickly.
Yeah, I can watch the Hanazuki.
So I'm assuming it's going to be more like that. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll actually be something where everyone will be able to watch it together legit, like in like a legit form, and not like, streaming it or something like that, which will be nice. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how we can do that for Triple E. It's something we'll have to kind of get when we get there, because we still don't know if these are going to be like full 22-minute episodes, or they're just going to be more shorts, or since it's the internet, who knows how long they'll be. They could vary from week to week in terms of their length wildly. So we'll kind of have to get to that, Red, when we get there for it. I know one thing I do want us to do more of, and we've done this a couple times already, and it's kind of more of a deal of not having time to do it between wanting to finish discussing Season 4 and having all the new seasons to discuss and the Equestria Girls shorts and everything. I would like us to discuss some more special episodes like this one, like where we discuss something like the toys. We have some ideas that we have internally here for other episodes that aren't necessarily discussing an episode, but discussing something, a specific topic of pony.
Related to the show, of course.
Yeah. Like we had the MOP, the Fandom and You special episode a little bit ago, and we've had a couple other specials. More stuff like that is stuff that we also want to do more of going forward. It's just a matter of, again, finding the time. I mean, this week is supposed to have been my week off from work, and it's doing 3 Triple E episodes this week just to try and... because of how it worked out with the series coming back from hiatus has been crazy, so we'll see how that kind of goes.
Just to give you some idea how much Rain Shadow puts work into those rips that he does for the show. Just for the 2 episodes that aired last weekend, he was doing that for like 9 hours. I'm sure Rain Shadow probably is going to hate me for revealing that, but yeah.
And that was just the 2. And then of course the 3 specials were released on DVD on Tuesday. So
that's without me mentioning how long that took as well.
So literally the entire day, Tuesday, when I wasn't doing that little portion here when we were talking on Triple E, I was working on those rips the rest of Tuesday. So yeah, it's been fun. But I went away on actual vacation the past 3 days, which was nice. So
you fucking deserved it, man.
To say, yeah, you really work hard for the.
But it kind of gets it's more like it kind of gets worked out like that way with Hasbro being like, oh, we're gonna have 2 episodes, or Discovery Family, or whatever, being like we're gonna have 2 episodes premiering this weekend, and oh yeah, it's also the week where the shorts or specials finally release, and yeah. Thanks.
And this is on top of, and this is on top of Rain actually having a job as well.
Yeah, well, like I said, I guess at least I was.
Well,
off
I think we
this
all
week.
do. I think everyone on the site actually has a job here. So
yeah, I mean, this was my week off vacation from the job, so I guess that at least somewhat helped.
Your week off vacation, where you go for your job, and what do? You probably work harder than you do on the job, getting all those rips done.
So yeah, that's fun. But yeah, I mean, going forward, we definitely want to continue doing this and doing Triple E. And we starting to do some other things, try and experiment like with This Week in Pony, and trying to be able to discuss news and stuff that we don't always get to discuss. And we've tried a lot of other things. Kind of our goal here as on our site right now is being that we obviously can't stream Pony, but we still want to be able to talk. We still want to be able to facilitate discussion on it and good discussion on it. And that kind of all started with Triple E here, and we've done some other things like we had the Discord forum, the Discus forums, which I blame myself for not participating in that more. But again, it's kind of a time issue. But we kind of had that on there because the thing with IRC chat is it's very in the now. Like it doesn't it facilitates in the now discussion, but it doesn't really facilitate discussion otherwise. So people would just show up for streams and then leave, and you wouldn't see anyone until the stream came back. So we're trying to figure out ways that maybe we could get people to stick around longer, because we would always as a group in our private mod chat, we'd always discuss and shitpost and post ponies and stuff like that all day every day pretty much. But you didn't really get that in the chat, and that's one of the reasons why we moved to Discord here as our main chat, is because it facilitates us not just having a stream discussion room, but now we can have all these other rooms that are conveniently listed in the sidebar there, that you can post in if there's a stream going on. You can chat in one of the off-topic rooms about something else. Well, that's something we couldn't really do in the chat. It's where we had the no non-image links rule while the streams going on, and we try to keep it on discussion. So again, trying to facilitate different discussion there, and also Discord has persistence. So if you leave and you come back, you can see all the chat you missed, which is nice. So you can kind of have discussions even if no one's there. You can still post something and not worry about no one not seeing it. So that's one of the reasons why we kind of moved over to Discord here from just IRC, being that we have less people here. We don't need that sturdiness that IRC had during those big streams, and it just helps us hopefully facilitate some more discussion, some more community here within the small community we have outside of just the streams we do. So going forward, we hope to continue to do that and just be able to discuss about this for as long as ever Pony is gonna go on. It's the ride that never ends. So
Spike is best bot, by the way. I want to stroke Spike for letting me do some slots in good old Dragon's Den, which reminds me of which every time I say it reminds me of the freaking TV show called Dragon's Den that was shown here in the UK.
Oh my! You heard it here first. First, everyone. Matt the Shadow Man wants to stroke Spike.
Mr. What's that? Mr. Ben the Man? That sounds like a shipping name, if you ask me.
The best name, Mr. Ben is the man.
The man. Oh my god.
But yeah, I really wish I'd do some more goofball streams, because I think that I got a reasonably decent reaction to stuff like me doing a reading as a Dalek and stuff like that. And even when I did consider doing like mini riffs of like shorter stuff, or stuff that perhaps we as a group may not necessarily agree to do as an episode, but something I sort of feel passionate a billion backs with Future Armor. I felt strongly enough to think that was shit enough for me to actually mention. But the problem was I actually think it's some of my worst ever stuff I've ever done for the site. That may surprise some people here. I think I just got way too angry over it, and over really silly, petty things, and I'm kind of not really happy with it.
I think there's a difference between stuff you riff and it's kind of enjoyable to riff, and stuff you riff and you actually deeply dislike it.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
that's why I'm a bit on the fence now about doing the Emoji Movie, but according to Xena, there is enough stuff to riff in it, so we'll probably still be doing it.
It would feel anticlimactic if we didn't. Given how much we joked out of it since it's been announced.
It's one of those unfortunate things we have to do it. Yeah.
It was like Moon Monster Madness. We had to eventually do it.
Yeah.
Even though I'd already streamed it, we had to do it again because it was so what the fuck.
It was my god.
Actually, what was more what the fuck? Moon Monster Madness or the recent Jetsons and WWE crossover?
I think that was more what the fuck. I mean,
I had to agree with the Jetsons
The Jetsons.
WWE
Moon Monster
one.
Madness.
Um,
The Jetsons.
the only reason I say that is because I actually wasn't here for Moon Monster Madness to riff on that, even though I did see that when we streamed it non-riffed. So,
Yeah, it's the Jetsons was definitely had the more WTF premise. The Scooby Doo one was pretty WTF too, but
We need to do Surf's Up 2 as well at some
Oh
point.
my god, no! I need to actually go and rewatch this Annie 2 movie that they were showing on Discovery Family last night, because I just kind of tuned into the last 30 minutes while I was waiting for the shorts to come up, and it was like okay, it's Annie. It's obviously a bad sequel to Annie. So what? And then they start talking about we got to stop the missile launch, and I'm like, excuse me?
What?
What is this? A sequel to Annie the musical? And they're talking about stopping the missile launch. What was the? I forget what the Let me see if I can. Oh yeah, here an actual line from it. I had to write down because it was just what the fuck. This is an actual line from last 20 minutes of the film there. Hurry up, Annie. If we don't get this thing launched over the ocean, we'll all be blown to smithereens. So I need to actually see if that's actually going to be worth riffing, because that blew my mind, and what the fuck that was.
I believe you tweeted about this from your channel, but I also want us to stream the incredible documentary that everyone has been waiting for since the dawn of time. Do you poop enough?
What?
It was one of those infomercials, but it was just.
Hey, that reminds me of the the unicorn pooping video on YouTube. I can't remember what it's called now.
Squatty Potty.
Yeah, Scotty Potty. That's the one. Thank you. Yeah, Scotty Potty reminds me of that. Do you poop enough? In the case of Sir Patrick Stewart, yes, yes, he does.
He poops more than enough now.
The problem for Sir Patrick Stewart, I feel bad because he's going to be doing that, but anyone on the internet now is just going to meme the fuck out that he did that.
Oh yeah.
It's like
he put his career in the shitter.
I don't know if you've seen. I think there's a review. I think it was Chris Stuckman's. I might be wrong. No, I think it was someone else's actually. But Sir Patrick Stewart was interviewed on the red carpet. Sorry, I mean the emoji carpet. It was actually blue with emojis on it. But anyway, yeah. But anyway, he was interviewed by someone in the media, and he basically said, "Casting me." He said, "This is the words he said. The exact words he said in the interview. Casting me was a joke."
Yep.
There's a problem with that, Sir Patrick Stewart. The joke isn't very fucking funny, and it just makes you look bad as a result.
I mean, what is the joke there? It's just,
It's someone of Sir Patrick Stewart's quality and background. Because don't forget, he's a fully trained Shakespearean actor doing that role. That's the joke. Ha ha.
Yeah.
I really need to restream the BBC Hamlet here again, because he was actually really good in the role of King Claudius, with 10th Dr. David Tennant in the lead role of Hamlet.
It's pretty bad when you have William Shatner having a better and more well acted voice actor role than Patrick Stewart did this year.
But apparently Patrick Stewart, it sounded like he literally recorded those 8 lines of dialogue he had for that film on a phone whilst he was on the toilet.
Well, you got to get into character.
He probably
Matt.
was.
Oh my god.
Whereas Shatner would put in probably one of his best performances that I've seen him ever do for a show based on My Little Pony. It's like we live in bizarro world. We really freaking do.
2017 is the bizarro year.
Look at the performances of all the Actually, this is something we can perhaps quickly. I'm sorry I'm dragging this out, but the special guests that have appeared on the show since we've started doing AAA. I mean, fucking Lena Hall was bloody amazing. I'm sorry,
Agreed.
but that song was still fucking phenomenal. And why the hell did that? I'm gonna get Rain Shadow so angry here. Why did that lose to True Romance at the daytime Emmys?
I swear, if freaking Perfect Pair isn't nominated for a bunch of Emmys, I'm gonna be pissed off.
I think it also helps that, I think we may mention that on EE, but it also helps that, I think Shatner, at least for fans of the show, and wanting to be on there, and not just as another paycheck. so they're not just phoning it in because they want it to be there.
Or like, say, The Simpsons, where it's just essentially a badge of honor saying, "Hey, look, I'm famous now because I'm on this show."
Yep.
Yay!
Oh yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's basically why anyone ever goes on The Simpsons now. It's just basically a badge of honor to say, "Look, I've made it. I'm on this show. I'm on this show that's been on since a million billion years, and it's no longer really all that relevant anymore." You know. But the thing is with MLP, they don't seem to have special guests just because they are a special guest. I mean, that's a little bit of it, a tiny bit, but the real reason any of these people have appeared on the show, with perhaps the exception of John Delancey, but that's a special case because that was like very early on in the show, is because they wanted to. And I think the reason why John Delancey keeps coming back is because he wants to.
Mm-hmm. They legitimately enjoyed the show, and they reached out to, and they expressed that publicly, and the show reached out and asked them if they would like to voice character, and they said yes, you know, and they were able to work.
But the thing is, what I love about the show is they make the most of it as well. They don't just, you know, they don't just think, oh great, we've got this person, let's write an episode around the fact that it's
make
that
him voice
person.
Darkseid.
Let's make. But that could have worked with better writers. That could have worked. But no, what I mean is they didn't write an episode just because a person was in it. Okay, maybe you could make that argument with Cheese Sandwich and Weird Al, but to be honest, Cheese Sandwich as a character does not feel out of place in Equestria. They
made it work really well in MLP's lore and how they weaved him into
for example, William Shatner in the recent episode. He played a character that you could say, oh, well, someone else could have played him, but you could tell that's definitely Shatner, but it felt natural, it felt right, and that is such a difficult thing to do, to make that the case. And that's why I have no real worry about having so many of these special bigger actors and actresses that are in the MLP movie. I mean, having people like Emily Blunt and Michael Pena and so on, and and having Sia and all that. I mean, I think that the show, the staff that work on it, because a lot of the people that are working on the movie have worked on the show in some capacity, and I think they'll do a good job. And I think having these special guests, it's a treat for us as watchers of it. But in terms of the show, I think they work them in so well. I mean, I still think the best implementation of a character in the show, I still think, is actually Lena Hall. Yeah, I mean, her great singing was utilised to full effect, but it was there on top of having a great character there as well.
Yeah, and I think as we mentioned with the EU, it's like you said, Matt, they naturally were able to make Shatner part of the show, and then I think Ray mentioned on EE they could have easily did a Star Trek thing and paired it up in this and shoehorn and just tried to shoehorn a bunch of Star Trek references by pairing him up with Delancey, but they managed to do something different, beat our expectations, and make a natural role for it.
Because I feel if there was a show that already had John Delancey as part of the main cast, and William Shatner expressed interest in the show, and they were able to get him on, I think most shows would have made some sort of funny comedy parody episode with him and John Delancey in the same episode with a bunch of Star Trek references and whatnot, and it probably would have been a fun episode. But instead, and this is what I mentioned, earlier this week on the Perfect Pair episode, instead they stuck him in this really emotional, Applejack episode that the whole fandom has been waiting for 7 years, and made him have this really good emotional role in it. It was just I don't think many other shows would have done that in that scenario. And definitely something I'm looking forward to in future seasons. And and that's something that is relatable to kind of our discussion here, because that's something that only really started in season 4, and season 5 was kind of the first season where they kind of continued this.
I'll say this now: I will forgive Sir Patrick Stewart for playing the piece of shit emoji in the Emoji Movie if they actually cast him as Starswell the Bearded in MLP and have him go up against Q.
All will be forgiven.
I mean Discord, not Q.
Same
I mean Discord. Same difference.
All will be forgiven. Well,
I think it's a role that he was born to play. I mean, sorry, no, I mean the poop emoji. He actually says that in an interview that was the role he was born to play.
Oh, Patrick, I know you're trying to be tongue-in-cheek funny there, but when your mouth is full of shit,
it's not nice.
It's not nice. Well, we better start wrapping it up here because we've been going on for a while and we've got other things to do today. So, yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this special episode 100. I definitely never thought we would make it this far in Tripoli here, but it's fun that we got to discuss as much as we have for as long as we have. And like I said, we're gonna keep continuing on with this as we go forward into episode 101 next week, where we'll talk about today's new episode, which I'm sure will have a lot to discuss, maybe even more to discuss than we have right now once we get to Tuesday.
Fame and misfortune.
Fame and misfortune. So we have definitely a lot to talk about that.
Written quotation marks by M.A. Larson.
So, yeah,
we'll just have enough to talk about with the bloody controversy over fucking that.
Yeah, we'll have enough to talk about in story and writing. Just there. So yeah, that'll be this Tuesday then at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time or normal time, and we will be having a new This Week in Pony episode as well. It's been long enough. We have a few new things that we kind of discussed today a little bit that we'll be discussing in more detail tomorrow on Monday. So make sure to join us for our next episode 8 of that on Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, as well as we'll be discussing some of that for a little bit on Monday. So, and did we decide and announce what we were doing for CQ Riffs next week? Because I don't think we did, and we probably should I think we were going with Surf Ninjas. I think that's kind of maybe what we were going to decide on.
We're going to be watching one of the cinematic masterpieces with the acting holy grail that is the human shrug that is Rob Schneider.
My favorite. Oh no, hold on, I got it. You can't say that without the emoji here. Not my body. There we go. My favorite.
Rob Schneider plays a person that ends up teaching these kids to be surf ninjas. Derp-de derp, de derp, de derp, de derp, de derp.
That is legit the summary of the of the movie. Oh, so yeah, we'll be watching that next Saturday here at the same time, 1 p.m. on CQ Riff. So make sure you join us for that. That's gonna be fun. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I like doing CQ Riffs. So hopefully it'll be enjoyably bad. But yeah, anyway, thank you all so much for joining us for episode 100. It's been a lot of fun talking with everyone. Just kind of this day full of meta here, meta everywhere. So I'm glad we could add more meta to today and kind of do some talking here on episode 100. Is that kind of how things have changed the past couple of years? So anyway, thank you all so much for joining us today, and we hope you will...
Don't get cooked. Stay off the hook.
Have you been playing that this entire time? It wouldn't surprise me.
No, not really. I was playing it partly, but not the entire time.
If I had been given an advanced copy of Sonic Mania, I'd have been playing that throughout this, but I don't, so I haven't.
Yep. Oh, that's going to happen on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I do wonder, because apparently my collector's edition for the PS4 is supposed to be being dispatched today, so I might get it by Monday. If that's the case.
But your code's locked, right? It's because you have the PS4 one.
Yeah, and
I probably will be. It's a shame I don't have the Switch version coming. The reason why I pre-ordered this collector's edition back on the 20th of October last year. I'm not a Sonic nut, honest.
Nope,
Honestly, I'm
nope,
not.
Not at all. Not at all.
neither am I.
Oh God. Well, okay.
I'm not also buying it for the Switch as well. I actually am.
Not at all.
I would buy it for the PC, but my Windows doesn't work on my Mac anymore. I got rid of it because Windows fucking sucks.
It's delayed anyway.
Then you'd have to wait longer for the PC version.
This is true. Okay, well, we'll see you all on Monday then for This Week in Pony, and again for our next episode of Equine Episode Examination on Tuesday. So thanks for sticking by us past 100 episodes and the 3 episodes we did this week, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye,
And
everyone.
remember, don't be a dick!
Also, don't put it in your mouth.
In a sandwich.
We're using a penis fan.
Bye bye, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Place it in both hands.